Deep Fried Thoughts, it's the best podcast. Deep Fried Thoughts. Don't worry, we're working on a better intro. All right, dude. Welcome back. It's been a while.
Here we are. New digs.
Yeah, looks very different here. I'm excited. And we've had a long break, so this is nice to get back into things.
For sure. I think one of the coolest things in the room actually isn't even on camera.
What's that?
You have that neon sign over there.
Oh, yeah. So I was really excited.
You're going to have to cut a clip of that in there.
Yeah, I will. I'll show you guys. So, or actually, I'll post it up on the Instagram. It's Deep Fried Thoughts Podcast at Instagram. I bought that thinking that would look great on the podcast. I was going to have it right here. For those of you audio listeners, you can go on YouTube if you want to see what we're pointing at. But I was going to have it right here. And I set this all up. I was all excited. I did a little test video. And it was just blinking like crazy. And I was like, that's so weird. I looked this up. And neon lights don't do that. And I was like, oh, I cheaped out. Now, cheap out, I mean, it was still like almost $200 to have it custom made.
It looks nice.
But it would have been really expensive if it was neon. But it looks exactly the same. I love it. But now it's just for guests at this point.
Yeah.
And you can't really return custom things like that. There was like a very long no return policy where they would send me pictures and I would approve it. And it was like, all right, you're not getting your money back at this point. And it's like, okay. I mean, I still like it. But yeah, I didn't know that. I kept trying to lower the brightness and everything. And it just was like this flashing mess and messed the whole cameras up. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Some LEDs are like that. The hertz of the LED versus the refresh rate of the camera.
So
just makes it go crazy.
You can adjust the speed. But for some reason, when I would adjust the speed, it would also increase the brightness, and it would go so bright that the camera couldn't.
It would wash out.
Yeah, it would wash it out. So it was like it was a miss no matter what I did. It's all good though.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's still good. I still like it. But anyway, dude, this was a long break. I don't even really have a good reason why I was on such a long break, other than that it was nice to be on a break. Like it took much longer to get this room done than I was expecting. And then getting back in the swing of things, it was like, man, this is like really nice not having any responsibilities, but I seriously started to miss it.
Especially approaching holidays, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's like...
There's a lot going on.
Construction finishes, the room's ready, end of summer's there, wrapping up some trips, holidays are here, life is busy with kids. Yeah,
so we were just talking before we started recording about like the AI, so... now I had AI doing some of the editing, and that was like a really big like relief. And that was nice and all, but it was still taking up a lot of time. Then there was issues with it, like it wasn't doing it right. Like the last YouTube video we put up was like real choppy, and I didn't realize that until I was done editing. And I'm like, well, it's too late now. I've spent hours on this. And it was just like the AI is just not quite there yet. It's cool, but it's just too much chance of it messing something up. So... now I'm like, I think I finally got it figured out now. I think it's going to be a simple process where everything's going to be...
Getting into the system.
Yeah. Dude, it's interesting. Before I got into this, the last thing I thought was going to take all this time was the process of editing. Now, I've talked about this before. I'm sorry if this is boring anybody listening, but I really understand now that there's jobs where just the stuff I'm learning, if I was to get more proficient with it, I think I can have a job doing that. It's that much that I've had that like you have to learn to be on the back end. Now I understand why there's industries of people that just do audio video. And that I maybe it sounds silly if anybody listening or if you know what goes into it, but I didn't. I thought you're just pressing a button, you're tweaking a couple little things. I didn't think there was much to go into it. It's incredibly advanced. Depending on how deep you want to go into it.
Yeah, I mean the little bit like small amount of video editing that I've done before, it's definitely eye-opening. You're like, wow, this takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Well, the only other thing I can equate it to, if somebody's maybe in trades or something like that, and I still find myself doing this every single time, specifically with this one thing, is welding. You look at a project and you're just like, oh, it's like 6 welds. They're like a few inches long each. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
And then you get into the project and it's like 12 hours later, you have your welds done and you're like, where did all of my time go?
Yeah, absolutely. So that happens often at work anyway, just in general.
True.
My boss definitely likes to think about how long something's going to take and then plan things out, and the day never goes that way. Just like time management, it's like I don't know what you think I'm going to be doing here, but I'm not Superman. But anyway, yeah, time just flies
He's the
by,
boss. He's got to set the
yeah.
bar really high
Yeah.
so that you can strive for it.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, AI is not quite there. I've definitely learned a lot, but yeah, it's interesting because like I mean, I've been making for years. I'm sure you've done this too, doing quick edits, and like I loved how quick I can get with like little edits on my phone and
Oh yeah,
chopping
if you
up
want to
videos.
make like a clip for social media.
Yeah, even adding audio or doing commentary or like picture in picture. Like I was like, man, I am good at this, but. They're literally good for just that. Like if you want to do anything else or have any kind of quality added to it, and you're not just snipping things from other people, it's a whole other ball game. But anyway, have you been?
Busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The holiday just passed. You have a good Christmas?
Yeah, Christmas was great. It was really fun with the kids this year. So I have 3 kids, 7, 4.5, and sub 1 year baby. And the 2 older kids were just, I mean, they've obviously always been into Christmas, and last year they were like kind of more into it, but like this year, especially with my oldest, my son, just things he got meant like so much more to him because he's actually starting to look at things of more like long-term value. Whereas like before it's like, oh, look at this, it's so cool, yay.
And then it's done.
Yeah. And then my 4.5-year-old, my daughter, she just is such like such a bright happiness about stuff and just gets so excited and like holds it and says, I love this. Like her purest reaction to something that we got her was actually this, it's like a memory foam ice cream cone that smells like ice cream.
Interesting.
And it was like a $4 toy in a bag. It's like this big. And it's just an ice cream cone and you can smush it, but it's like bright and colorful and soft. And she's like, I'm going to love this forever. And she goes, and it smells like a cake cone.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Chemicals. Good stuff.
Yeah, chemicals. Yeah. And it says like in print, like made in China across it. And I'm like,
nice.
What is that smell? It's gone now anyway. It like lasted a few days.
Yeah. That's pretty cool though. Have you ever had, maybe not this Christmas, but just in general, have you ever had one of those moments like you see on social media where the kid is just ungrateful about the gift in any way?
A little
Or
bit,
just
yeah.
like, no, yeah? Was it this Christmas?
I feel like it might have been last Christmas for a little bit. There was like one thing that Barrett kind of just was like, well, yeah, I knew I was getting that, and just brushed over it, went to the next thing, and it was supposed to be like his big thing.
Dude, I was really embarrassed this year. So my youngest, Harley, we do a Secret Santa, and we usually go to my sister's house at the end of Christmas for Christmas dinner, and we'll do a Secret Santa at the end of the day. So we went through all of our Christmas gifts and at the house here, and I was on social media while the kids were playing with something, and I was just looking at seeing what everybody's posting, and I saw a couple of those like ungrateful kids. Like one little kid opened up like a PS5 and just like brushes it off. I mean, I'm talking like little kid. Like PS5 is a serious piece of equipment for a child.
That is a serious piece of equipment for a child.
And for a kid to just brush it off and he goes, oh, I wanted a PC. And I was like, oh, that little brat. Oh, I'd murder him.
Right.
Little did I know a couple hours later I was going to be in that position. So my sister got Harley. And she asked me, what does she want? I can't think of anything. I'm like, oh, you know what? Earlier today, we were looking through toys and things because I was shopping for someone else. And she saw a Princess Peach from the new movie. And I was like, we play Princess Peach and Bowser all the time. She pretends we're getting married. We get to the altar, and then she fights me and beats me up. And then Mario comes and saves her, right? And that's like a game we play all the time. And I was like, you should get her the Bowser and Peach, and me and her could play with that. Because I just showed it to her, and she was really excited. Like the Bowser blows out smoke. You fill him up with water, and he like steams it out.
Well, that does sound cool.
Yeah, it was really neat. And she watches the movie all the time, loves it. So I was like, definitely get it. And my sister said specifically, are you sure? Because that seemed like an odd gift to get to a little girl. And I was like, yeah, 100%. She's going to love it.
She's going to love it.
She's going to love it.
You're like, trust me, I know this.
Yeah. So it's like, we're opening up gifts, and I'm talking with somebody else and looking at Thatcher's gift, and I just hear this like commotion. And Harley's upset, and I see something get thrown, and everybody's upset, and my sister's yelling over at me, I'll never forgive you. I can't believe you just did that. Like jokingly to me. And I'm like, what the heck? And Harley is just pissed. She's so angry that she got a Bowser because she was saying it was for boys. Turns out one of her male cousins got that too.
Oh.
Yeah, he saw it come in the mail for Harley and wanted one, so my sister was like, I'll just buy two. So he had
Yeah.
one that he was playing with. She saw it as a boy's toy that they were playing with for the last couple hours.
And I don't want a boy toy.
Does not want a boy toy. She was so mad. Everybody yelled at me. It was super awkward. And then 10 minutes later, when nobody's paying attention, she's begging me to open it and play with it. And I'm making sure everybody's looking. I was
Yeah.
like, you know?
You see this? You see this?
Yeah.
You see what she wants?
But dude, that's embarrassing. I'm like, I know she's a little kid, but it's like, I just was thinking, I was like, I don't ever want that to happen ever again. I was like, I'm never doing
Yeah,
that.
parent moments like that are kind of funny.
Because it reflects on you.
Yeah. When you're like, oh, I don't want... And that's the thing, is that that really... It's just about yourself, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Totally selfish.
So, like, you're in the moment and you're like, oh, no. Or like, I can't believe they're doing that. And, like, really, you're just thinking about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. This is delicious, by the way. This is 2 years old.
2 years.
2 years old. It's a Dogfish Head.
Dogfish Head?
120 minute
Delaware
IPA.
beer.
Yeah, the last time... In fact, if you want to hear a weird episode, it was when George Brooks and I had...
Oh,
done
yeah.
Yeah, this was what we drank. We drank like one or two of these and blacked out. And I haven't been drunk before
and they
after
were
in a
aged
very long
then.
time. They were aged for 1 year.
Yeah.
This is from the same batch. It's been a year now, and I have 6 more.
Is that label meant to look like that, or is that from being aged?
That's just from being aged.
Okay.
Probably a little dampness on the box. It's been down in the basement for 2 years. So yeah, I was very cautious about having this, and I started drinking this a little before you came. I'm like really stretching this bad boy out.
Okay.
It's
That's been
just
open for a minute.
Oh yeah, and I've barely touched it, only because I was so afraid of what happened last time. Which, if you go back, I don't know. I'm sure I've talked about this. There's like 2 hours of that podcast I just didn't air.
You just didn't air, yeah.
It was just nonsense, and we came off as super gay. We were telling each other how much we loved each other and loved each. We were complimenting each other's outfits, and I don't remember any of this. I found out later when I was editing it. I was like, I don't know what happened. Did we finish? And we did. We finished, and then we took a photo, and then we just sat and talked for like 2 hours.
But it was just rolling.
It was super gay. Yeah. Oh yeah. I didn't turn anything off, so it rolled until all the batteries died and everything.
That's funny.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. So I'm gonna be careful.
And we just don't have 3 of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Although it's a year older now, so
That's true. It's good though, but anyway, I like old stuff.
Am I correct in assuming that the alcohol concentration goes up
Yes.
when a beer ages? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know by how much. I'm sure I could look it up.
I mean, I imagine it's not. I imagine it's not crazy, but probably at least significant.
This is already pretty high though. I want to say this is like 13 or 14.
Oh wow. Okay.
Maybe I'm way off. Maybe it's not that high.
That's pretty high for a beer.
Should be
I
right
think.
there. Well, this beer in particular.
Which, for people listening, I don't drink alcohol at all, so
I'm probably way off. Somebody listening is thinking I'm an idiot.
Mhm.
Whatever. I don't know why it doesn't say it.
I say if Mike's listening, he's probably just yelling at us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I got some stuff from Mike that I'm aging too. Mike's been doing really well. Mike got, I think you knew this, but he got for I guess like the German World Cup of beer that they do. It was like thousands of entries from all over the world, and his Pilsner was the #1 pick, best Pilsner in the world.
That's awesome. Von C. Brewing, in Norristown, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, he was telling me the other day, like his local beer around the corner is starting to have it on tap.
Like his beer garden?
Yeah, around Philly. But it's funny. He just moved to a new area up in like North Philly, and we play video games almost every night.
Okay.
So I'm always talking to him, and he keeps telling me about how he's given like some of the local dads on his block low fills, like anything that's not filled properly. You can't sell.
Okay. Yeah.
So he gives them out to people. I don't know if I'm supposed to be sharing that, but anyway. He's given them out to a couple of the dads around the neighborhood, and they've been really nice. And like they bought him like a bottle of scotch, and then one actually brought him over like these really cool whiskey glasses that he designed the art on. And actually, I just ordered them today. They're really cool. But yeah, it's just funny. He's like the beer guy in the neighborhood now, and that's a good way to make friends.
It is, and I mean it's probably good for business too.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Now everybody's going to see it. Yeah, around town. It's good stuff. But anyway,
which is funny because I remember going to a New Year's party at his house. Which is like 2 or 3 houses ago for him. And he had just got like a, brew your beer at home kit. And he was like trying to get everyone. And that was the start of it.
That was it.
Now he's a brewmaster, head brewmaster for
Von C.
For Von C Brewing.
Used to be, formerly Schmitz.
Okay.
That's the Schmitz family. So this is like the next generation So like they're,
You know, he told me that. I forgot about that.
yeah, they're, what do you want to say? The wrong beer. Anyway, one of his beers that he makes, I'm drawing a blank on the name, is like a spin on the original Schmidt's recipe.
Okay.
It's like a modernized version of it. But yeah, he has a blast. He'll talk my ear off about it, and I just sit there and listen. I love hearing it because he's so passionate about it. I'm learning a lot. I couldn't recite any of it, but I'm enjoying it in the moment. I didn't realize how much goes into it.
Yeah, so that's it. I love talking to people that are passionate about something. I don't even have to be interested in it.
Yeah.
Like, so our friend Sean, I used to work with him. He was like super into single malt Scotch whiskey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was working for him, and he would just talk about it. It was just part of his life. He drank it every day. You know, he was super big into collecting it and limited runs and this and that. And I ended up learning and picking up a lot about Scotch from that, but it was just because he would talk about it all the time because it was his hobby. He was passionate about it, and I had no interest in alcohol. I still don't, but I learned a lot about Scotch from that.
Yeah,
Which was funny.
that's definitely like
I've forgotten a lot of it by now too. I mean, I used to probably know a lot more, but yeah.
That's something that's fun to get into. I got the itch for a while. I can't say it's worn off. I've kind of just figured out things I like, but the itch for whiskey, or, you know, and different bourbons. So yeah, dude, I got it. And I'm like, oh, I like this. I like this kind of flavor. And it's like, you know, you talk to people, even when you're there. I'm looking. If you're like spending too much time looking, half the time I'm at the liquor store, someone will be like, oh, hey man, you need help finding something, or you know, it's just, and they'll, oh, I like this. I tried this. This has more of that flavor, this flavor, and a lot of friendly people, and everybody's really excited to share like their thoughts. And I love it. But then, you know, I'm like, oh, I really like these, you know, this sweetness or this like vanilla taste or this cherry or whatever else. And so I quickly filled up my liquor cabinet and spent way too much money. And now I'm like, I'm knocking off a bottle like every month, maybe. It's hard. I don't drink as much, but yeah, it was really fun trying to figure stuff out. Now I've got like probably like 6 or 7 bottles that I really like that I'd rather just rotate them whenever I finish one. I like to get the same thing.
That's fair enough.
And a little small list of things I'll never afford. But aside from that, yeah. But it's fun. I can see how you can go really deep into something like that.
Yeah.
Not to mention the value in it. It's crazy.
Well, yeah, we would always kind of joke with him when he said it, but he was like, oh, I bought that. It's investment whiskey. Because he'd get something at auction, or he'd, you know, get his hand on like a sticker price bottle of Pappy from the year that it came out. Which if you buy it the year it comes out, and you're able to
win.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because, you know, a month later it's like tripled in value.
Yeah.
But it's actually not super expensive. But if anybody has shopped for it before you go to buy Pappy Van Winkle, it's very expensive. Like very expensive.
You know,
because they're produced, it's limited runs only.
Yeah. You know how that you can purchase things like through a firm now, where as long as you don't miss a payment, you can pay over time. I forget the terminology of that, but a lot of those plans are popping up now.
Yeah.
And someone sent me recently.
Probably like the primary driver behind why America is in more credit card debt than ever.
Oh, it's so
because
bad.
Essentially it's classified as opening a credit card account. So people are just opening credit card accounts to like buy an Amazon cart.
Patrick Bet David, if you ever listen to him, great stuff on YouTube, conservative podcaster.
Clips in a couple episodes, not much though.
I've been listening to him a lot more often, but he did. Okay. There's a clip on YouTube that his page put out speaking about that, and I was blown. He was just reading off statistics, like different ages, like based on age and race, and who's spending the most on these. I forget the term, but it's where you, as long as you make the payments, you're not paying any interest, but you miss a payment, and boom, now you're paying all this extra money. I've done it a few times on some bigger ticket items, I call it. And I've always just paid more than what it asks, and I've just knocked it off quicker. But I don't like it. I haven't done it in a long time. I did it at first, and it's like it just feels dangerous.
I haven't done it yet.
No, it's a tricky one to get into, especially because you never know what's going to happen. You might have a bad month, and it's like, do I really have this $200 payment to put in? Because I always put the payments high to knock it off quick, and then luckily I never missed a payment. But he was going on about the amount of people that were using it. And it was insanely high. And I was like, oh, I wonder if everybody I know is doing this. Because it was one of those things where I didn't want to tell anybody I did it. Because it just felt like a bad move, a bad judgment call.
Don't want to be called poor.
Yeah, exactly. Well, not even just that. It's just, it feels like anybody I tell, I'm like, I would expect them to say, oh, that's stupid. Wait till you have the money. Which is exactly what you should do.
Is the best advice. That's the advice I would give. Do I always follow that advice? No, I haven't done a firm yet, but you know, credit cards are dangerous.
It's a great opportunity. I mean, like I said, I've been good about all of them. I've never missed it. It's been great. I'm able to buy, like, I bought my stake agent. My stake agent was, well, I don't want to say because Jenny's going to listen. It was a lot. And I was like, well, we get a certain amount of money we take every month. And I was like, I could totally afford it over, 6 months doing that with a one large payment up front. So I was like, done. So I did that, paid it off, and I had it right away and had enough money
and
to...
we don't, myself included, we don't want to put in the effort for delayed gratification anymore.
No, absolutely not. It's gotten easier with the prices of things. The economy has definitely helped me be stingy about my money.
Yeah.
Like what I'm getting from my dollar, my value is really diminished. And it's made me be almost bitter. I was talking around Christmas with some of the family. I was like, I just don't want to aid this economy at all. I don't want to put any money into the economy. I don't want to put any money like anywhere but in my pocket and hold it there in the bank. I'm just afraid to spend things right now. Things just seem weird, and I don't want to support the high cost of things.
Yeah.
I'm just bitter about it. And I guess every generation goes through some sort of interest hikes and inflation, but this just seems to have come on so quickly, and it came right after such a high. Like during the, whether you like Trump or not, the Trump years were pretty golden as far as money. The first 2 or 2.5, 3, until COVID hit. But man, it was just I thought things were on the up and up. Now I don't know, and it's weird that things can change so rapidly. And I don't know if it's from my age or things are just happening quicker. But I've definitely gotten more cautious in my years now. My age.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we were only teenagers, but going through like the 2008 swing was definitely similar. This is reminiscent.
I read about it.
I feel like it was more extreme, but just in different areas.
Yeah.
Or each one was just as extreme, but kind of different areas. Obviously, the 2008 one kind of affected real estate.
It hit different people.
Directly and a lot more. Yeah. And this one was more like, consumer goods, global commerce, stuff like that. Above my pay grade. But, I can only talk about it on a level of speculation.
That's why I got to go into Bitcoin. Dude, I'm not going to get into like exact numbers as far as what I put in, but I've gone pretty heavy on it lately. And this is not advice to anybody. But I mean, when this is out, this will be probably a couple days before what we're about to talk about happens. But there's been a big push for hedge fund companies to be able to invest in it for their clients. And I'm not going to try and explain this as if I know what I'm talking about. I've just been listening to other people and trying to read things that are way over my head and trying to grasp it. But basically, it needs to be able to become an ETF for these companies. And that approval has to be given by the government. So if for an ETF to be approved, it has to go through a bunch of processes. And that answer of whether or not Bitcoin can be approved as an ETF is likely going to come between January 6th and January 10th. Okay. And it seems like it's going to be a yes. They're having backdoor meetings like almost every day, and everything from, the industry is saying, hey, this is going to be approved. They're trying to figure out all the details. And I don't know how much they have control or figuring it out and how that's going to affect everything, but you have all these companies that even if you go on their websites, they're talking about setting up for Bitcoin. So it's possible that, some of these companies are massive. Okay. So it's possible that in the month of January, you could see hundreds of millions of dollars that is dumped into it from people that aren't currently putting money into it.
Interesting.
And just the thought of that, I put in probably like 2 weeks after this got, some news. I've been putting in and out of Bitcoin for years now. Mostly because I was so bitter of the fact that I was buying them in the thousands many years ago to buy, substances. And it's just like a bitter thought where I don't want to be left behind ever again. So anyway, I've ridden the bandwagon with it and moved on up. But dude, the last 3.5 months now, I've made 40% on my investment. And that's insane. And that's just been the hype. Awesome. That's the hype wagon.
Yeah.
And I've just been like I watching it grow, and I'm like, I'm hitting the territory of like, do I use this as a down payment? Or do I let it ride? And Jenny's getting mad because I'm like, 5 years. I'm not taking it out for 5 years. And she's like, so what good is it? Like, it's an investment. I'm just afraid of missing. It's the FOMO.
I mean, the best investor that is maybe ever lived, but that's alive today, says the long game. That's Warren Buffett.
He's part of the old school way.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's day traders and stuff like that.
I feel like I'm somewhere in between.
But
mentally,
no, I mean, the goal is always if you leave it in long term, it's almost impossible for you to lose money.
Mm-hmm. Unless you're going on a risky company, but a proven company. Yeah. I mean, that's the point, right? So I've been putting in on specific companies and like the VU and like the SPY and things like that, just putting in weekly or monthly and adding in. But the Bitcoin one has been the most exciting to watch. And the Bitcoin one is definitely more fun for me and like play because it started out as such a small number, and I've been playing with that small number and watching it grow. I've added some money into it for sure, but most of it has just been gains from just jumping on different squeezes and things like that. Now I'm not really jumping on it so much because I lost a ton. Anyway, but it's been fun to watch. I'm really excited. Of course, when somebody's listening to this, by the time this comes out, you could be finding out that this was a total disaster, and just know that I'm very sad. But I'm still not. I'm still holding.
Well, wait a minute. The thing that you are really holding out on is that you're already rich on crypto and you just don't know it.
Oh yeah, my crypto wallet that I found in the trash with all of the passwords. Yeah, I almost opened it up without you the other day, or like a couple months ago.
Do it.
Like, nah, I put it away. I'll tell you what. If Bitcoin has this massive spike, I'll open it up. If it happens, like it'll be probably sometime within the next 3 months. I'll consider it. If it does what I'm expecting, and what a lot of people are thinking it might do.
There you go.
All right, and I'll share that. I'm so convinced that there's nothing on there.
So Carmen has had a crypto wallet and passwords that somebody threw away, and it's his. So if anyone's going to be mad about it, get over it. We don't care.
From a wealthy home.
Yeah. And you've had that for 5 years, 6 years?
About 6 years.
So the idea is that if it was already old.
5 years. Whenever the Bitcoin spike happened.
Yeah.
So maybe it had to be more than 4 years ago. So 5.
The idea that it was discarded as, I don't need this, I cleaned out a house, or maybe somebody went through a divorce, or whatever it was.
Well,
whatever it is, who cares?
Yeah.
It's old enough that, assuming that it wasn't brand new when that happened, that somebody could have put in a very small amount of money that is no longer a really small amount of money.
Yeah. The thing, and I'm going to, even though I don't think anything's on it, the thing I'll say against that idea is that the way it was thrown out, as a trash man, you pick up on so many things about people that are so weird. I'm not even going to try to explain how you do it, but you can know so much about people by just knowing they're trash. And I know that their son had gone away to college. And I know that when the son came back, I started seeing his car again because I was there twice a week. It's this beautiful neighborhood. So I knew he was back, and I, saying hi and things, you pick up on little things as well. So when he came back, or I think he left again, he moved out, and there was a bunch of stuff that looked like it was from a younger person all thrown out. There was a dresser that was thrown out and with stuff in the drawers. It looked like whatever he maybe forgot or left behind, his parents were just like, we're throwing it out. Like there was a PlayStation in there, like a PlayStation 4, excuse me, and some other things. And I was like, I don't think they know they threw this out, is kind of the feeling I got. So I just grabbed the box, I opened it up, saw all the passwords and all the recovery information written in there, and I just put it in my pocket, and I was like, well, we'll just wait and see one day. But
it's a way to do it.
Yeah. Possible. I mean, people have thrown out a lot of money just in the company I was working with.
Yeah.
Sometimes thousands of dollars. It's crazy.
Yeah. I could see that happening. One thing I have that Austin found for me, so when he was working for the same company you were, he was picking, somebody was cleaning out the garage, and they threw away a bunch of, garage items like, weed whacker stuff. There's a toolbox. It's not very big, like a handheld toolbox, but it has like 3 drawers and an open top. And it's all nice name brand tools in it. So it's a Sunex toolbox, right? Which is like a tool truck brand. And inside it had a full set of Snap-on combination wrenches and metric, has a full set of Snap-on metric 3/8 deep sockets, some Sun-X and Blue Point different in a couple Snap-on like bit sockets and hex sockets and stuff like that. Blue Point axle nut sockets and original USA Craftsman standard combination wrenches, just filled with stuff that like someone obviously didn't just go buy like a cheap kit.
Mm-hmm.
They obviously bought nice tools that they wanted, but they cleaned out their garage and whether they threw it away.
Yeah.
People throw away crazy stuff.
Dude, a lot of times when people passed away, they would just be like, I don't, someone, maybe they're from out of town and they come in to clear out mom or dad's house. Or maybe,
and nobody knows.
I mean, some of the stuff I'm not even going to say on air. I mean, but what some of the things I'm talking about.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I have found some sweet things that I'm like, I don't know if this is meant to be thrown out, but I'm not even going to hand this back at all. So, but yeah, like a lot of stuff, cash. I'll never forget this one time. The hopper is like with the big arm that comes in and scoops out the trash.
With the blade.
I'm not one to steal or like be stingy with people. I like to make it a point to share, especially to let people know I'm not that guy so that they don't do that to me. But the one time I was tempted, we split off. And I grabbed this one guy. He did tech repair because I was always throwing away screens.
Okay.
Like phone screens.
Yeah, phone screens, tablet screens, yeah.
And I would always see like the boxes. So obviously he was part of something where they would ship him. They would go through some company and he would get the product and repair it and send it out to the customer. Mm-hmm. Well, one day I'm picking up his trash and it was between him and a neighbor. And I don't know which one it was, but I ran the hopper up. And as soon as I got up to the top, a lot of things will fall through. $20 bills started raining down, like hundreds of dollars. And I'm just sitting there watching it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So I start opening it back up,
keep coming?
and it's falling into the most disgusting filth. And I'm just reaching in the dirty water and grabbing it, all these
trash
20s.
water.
And I was like, "That's so much money." I was like, "All right, we're gonna split this."
For people that don't realize, picture the shape of the back of like a rear loader trash truck, and it has this big scooped hopper, right?
Yeah.
And then like picture old trash juice that's in the bottom of your trash can that there's just like a little bit in there, except for picture like 250 gallons in the back of.
Dude, add in people's pee bottles, which we'd throw in all the time. So there's like urine in there, there's
trash
water,
juice.
There's whatever juices that somebody threw. Yeah, everything combined is foul.
Mm-hmm. And for obvious reasons, there's no drain that lets it out onto the road, right? Because you get in trouble for that.
But $20 bills that are raining down was definitely worth reaching in.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a fun day. But yeah, dude, all sorts of stuff. People found diamonds. The amount of jewelry that people would throw away, and I can't tell the difference of fake or real. But my guys would just scoop it up, throw it in a bag, and by the end of the day, they might have
just take it to a pawn shop.
Dude, the one time I found something that I really wanted, and I was like, well, I want this, and I don't care what that jewelry's worth, but I'm taking this thing. It's something I don't want to mention. So I kept that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you guys can have that. I was like, it's fake. I'm telling you it's fake. And thank God they didn't listen to me. They got like $1,000 worth of gold and diamonds.
Nice.
All of it
Good
was
for
real.
them.
All of it was real. It was like 3 big stands of jewelry boxes with like tons of drawers. And it was just loaded with like old school, like it looked like antique, like fake play jewelry.
Huh.
Because it was so gaudy.
Yeah, big.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was all like 24 karat gold and whatever else. But yeah, they made out good. But anyway, yeah, picking in the trash is totally cool. It's fun.
It's fun. I mean, it was growing up. It was like a way of life for us. We would go.
Oh yeah.
We lived in this in Voorhees, New Jersey. In case anybody's local, we lived in this neighborhood called Alluvium or Alluvium Woods. No, we just lived in Alluvium. Alluvium Woods was across the other way. It's a while ago. And we lived in this house that was... The only reason that we could live there is because it was in major need of repair. I mean, like, bank sale level in need of repair. Like, floors were coming up. There were sliding glass doors in the back that went to a deck that was never built. It needed a roof. Nothing it was any type of updated or anything. The person that lived there did a bunch of shoddy construction that was falling apart. Carpets were cut short and the tack strips were sticking out. Fireplace chimneys were built that they couldn't safely be used, stuff like that. So we lived in this house and, while we were there, we fixed some things or whatever. But the stuff that people would throw away would like blow my mind. Like,
in that neighborhood, yeah.
Yeah, in that neighborhood. Like, we would drive around, we would ride around on our bikes, and on a trash night, we'd be like, oh man, like, so-and-so's coming over next week. We need another bike. And he'd be like, oh, we'll just go get one on Wednesday. And like, literally, as a guarantee, if we drove around enough blocks, somebody would throw away like a newish working bicycle. Which, when you're like 11 years old, is like finding gold. But we found so much stuff. People would throw away, I mean, at the time, flat screen TVs weren't a thing. So, but we'd finding a 27-inch, 32-inch color TV was like huge. And just, people just trashing them, throwing them away. Just anything that you would think would be valuable, we would go find.
So, do you know about the swing that I found when I was a kid? You're aware of this? For those of you guys listening,
I have heard this story.
There's a video on YouTube under a different account. I think it's like, if I say the name, I'll give it away. But I'll give it to you at the end. You can go look it up. It's bad. But yeah, me and my brother and sister were going around our neighborhood. This is like in Audubon, New Jersey, Audubon Park. Not the kind of nice things you're talking about. And we found this.
No, not an area. Well, there's no area where you want to find this, but
no. So we were just
maybe especially not that one.
Yeah, I don't think we were looking for things in the trash. We were just like riding around on our bikes and scooters in the neighborhood. It was trash day, and we just found this weird looking swing. And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome!" So I grabbed it and I take it home. And we found a rope. We threw it over a tree branch, and I had like a carabiner. I like hooked it on, and I sit in it, and it was weird because it had like the seat wasn't normal for a swing. It was like two straps that ran across. So like one was almost on my back with my arms underneath of it, like holding my arms up, and the other one was supporting like my thighs. And then when we set it up, I was like, what I thought was supposed to be handles. We were like, wait a minute, I think your feet are supposed to go in this. So
indeed,
I strap my feet in, or I put my feet through the holes. And as soon as I sit back, it just puts me like I'm up in stirrups. It's just like you can't fight that. That's just how your body goes. And I just started spinning out of control. And what we found out was somebody's leopard print sex swing. And then you can find it on YouTube. It's Fatty on Sex Swing or something like that. I have no idea. It was like back when YouTube started. It's a very bad video, but you can see what I'm talking about. It's still up. Yeah, dude, that was disgusting because my parents came home and found it, and we're like, "What is that doing up in our backyard?" It didn't last long. It was gone by the end of the day. Yeah, that's disgusting, dude. Oh, but anyway, yeah, times are different now. And speaking of times, something I've talked about a lot is AI. And I've been thinking about it a lot more, and I know it's on a lot of people's minds, or maybe it's not on your mind at all, and I think it should be, because I think we are at the mountain peak right now of where things are really going to change. And I've said this before. I truly believe, and a lot of this has been said a million times, so I'm not saying anything brand new here, but I believe that like the shot heard around the world is what we reference as the start of the Civil War, right? Is that what that
Revolutionary War?
Yeah, sorry, Revolutionary War. I think the internet, in a whole, will be like a blip on the radar of what technology will become in the future. I think we'll look back and see like the gap between the creation of the internet, or the release to civilians of the internet, and AI as like being almost like one and the same. Like, because internet we thought was changing the world, but I really think that was the stepping stone to lead to where we're at now. I think AI is going to be like sliced bread and like the wheel, the invention of the wheel. I truly believe it will change everything we know about the world, everything we think we know about the economy, and just all around. I don't know what the world will look like, but I think we are on the forefront where we really don't know what it's going to be, but anything you can imagine, I think is possible with it, both good and bad.
For sure.
And I mean, I've had a lot of fun with it at this point, but it is scary to think about. I mean, I prepped for the podcast with it. I show it my notes. I go into ChatGPT and I show it my notes and I say, hey, do you think there's anything I'm missing here? And it'll give me some, and I feel like I'm talking to somebody who knows everything about my current situation and gives me some solid advice. And it's been really interesting, but it's like, well, what am I really teaching it? And what is this going to do for me in the future? Both good and bad. So it's always on my mind with everything. And I'm always thinking about jobs. Right now you're seeing around the country, a lot of states are implementing these really massive what's it called? Minimum wage. You know, minimum wage is rising in a lot of places. And I don't really I'm not here to argue that. Like, I understand that times are tough, and I don't really want to argue against somebody who's struggling. The argument used to be that those jobs weren't made for, adults, things like that. But there's a lot of people in the world. There's a lot of jobs available, but for a lot of people, that's maybe all they could find, or all their, they have the willingness to find. Either way, an easy answer for that is, well, we're just going to put touchscreens up that could do your job for you. I just saw, I think it's in Texas, the first, they called it the first fully automated restaurant, but there is still one person putting things together. But it's got a burger flipping arm that does that. It's AI implemented up front, so it will communicate with you, and you give it your order. It'll talk to you, and you never even see the person. But there was one woman in the back that was working and putting things together and handing them up. But eventually, they said they're moving to where it's going to be fully AI. Now, the cost of those items versus the cost of an employee plus HR and everything else that gets involved with that, and insurances, is a massive difference. So I don't see a reason why, as a business owner, you would want to keep people around. So anyway, I don't want to argue about that aspect of it, what's right or wrong, because money is really what drives those decisions. So no matter what we talk about morally, I think in the end, whenever a person can be replaced by something cheaper, it will be. Right?
Of course. So
I'm just curious how, I know how I envision it, but as far as AI goes, I'm curious how you envision an AI future and how it impacts various industries, what steps can be taken to prepare for it in the workforce, for these changes.
Man, that's a big one.
And this is share with everybody what you do for a living too, so we have an understanding of your perspective. Because for me, I'm blue collar. I'm doing physical labor, something that only a physical robot could replace me.
Yeah,
and the same for you, right?
For what I'm doing right now, to a point. So, my background is also blue collar. As a carpenter by trade for 10 years. Now I do architectural surveys. So I go into buildings and I draw as-built plans of there. So site surveys. So investigation would be another term in the construction industry for that. So I'm doing an investigation survey, as-built survey. And so technology and AI kind of is already starting to play a role into that. Not as much in my company, but in other companies.
It's probably Jenny coming home.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm going to check something, actually. Hold on one second. All right, sorry guys. We had, of course, another issue on. Yeah, all right. Everything seems to be working now. As I said, it's always something to learn. One of the settings when I restarted everything after testing it all didn't save.
Well, I think they were listening.
Yeah,
we start talking about technology.
AI is
AI, how it's going to take us over.
You don't want to use me? Okay, let's say you do it on your own. All right.
So they got in contact with us.
All right. It is definitely working now. We're back in it.
Okay.
So anyway, to recap, I will ask that question. Anyway, but I was asking, how do you envision the future of AI impacting various industries, and what steps could we take to prepare for that?
Yeah. So I was kind of getting into my industry a little bit. So let's just do construction as a whole, right? So I'm on the investigative as-built survey side. I used to be on the carpentry side. And specifically what I'm doing now, I think the next thing that it will start to do, because right now we already have 3D scanning, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone knows that 3D scanners exist for at least small level stuff. There are 3D laser scanners that I'm not using at my company right now, but lots of other companies are using them, that will basically, a laser points at a mirror and it spins, and as it's spinning, it takes hundreds of thousands of measurements a second as then the camera rotates. Right?
Does the camera rotates looking inward at the...
No, so a laser points out and then it shoots it at a right angle.
Okay.
And then that mirror spins around, and then the whole device spins as that's spinning, and it creates what's called a point cloud. So as it's spinning, it's taking hundreds of thousands of measurements a second, and it rotates 360 degrees, and it gets a sphere of measurements, right? So it takes that, and then you can scan multiple locations throughout a building or a room or in a space or whatever. All of it gets rendered, and it creates what's called a digital twin, a 3D model. And it uses that, and it kind of gets rid of a lot of manual measuring. So I use a 3D scanner at work. It's called a Matterport Pro 2, which is their older model right now. We've been using those for, 5-6 years since they came out, I think. And they're great. They use infrared light to measure, so it's not as accurate. I think they say over, for a model, they say like 2% about over 100 feet. So, plus or minus 2 feet over 100 feet. So that's small, but pretty significant. That could be a big deal, especially if there's distortion throughout the site or something. They have a newer one that uses LiDAR, like I talked about.
Like our phones, right?
Yeah, but probably like a more advanced version of that, because it's taking more individual measurements with like a more specific laser. And even those are only like plus or minus 20 millimeters, which is it's like just shy of an inch. People don't know. But then there's more advanced ones. That's like a $6,000 camera, right? Takes incredible photographic documentation. But the laser still leaves some to be desired as far as like detailed accuracy, getting big picture stuff accurately. If a wall isn't placed 20 millimeters, not a big deal in 99% of cases, right? Especially for commercial, which is what this stuff is being used for. The more advanced lasers, you're looking at like $120,000 plus. I mean, obviously, for just about anything that exists, sky's the limit for price. Somebody makes something that costs $1 billion for some reason.
Yeah, but even with these things, these are still like that wouldn't be AI. That's like really advanced technology.
Hang on. I'm getting there.
Okay.
So I'm trying to lay the groundwork that for what I do. I'm just trying to this is my anecdote, right?
My bad.
So these cameras exist, and those already exist down to these expensive cameras down to sub 1 millimeter, which is small. You're talking better than you can measure by hand, right? Like you couldn't possibly use a handheld laser distancer, which are extremely accurate, or tape measure to sub 1 millimeter, especially you're measuring off drywall and trim and stuff. So these things are good. The technology, the hardware technology is already there. And they're on a tripod, right? And basically, I'm the dummy holding the iPad, and I put this incredible smart piece of technology down, and I push the button and watch it go, and it turns, and then it's done, and it renders all on my iPad, and it places itself, and it creates a map. I then upload that to like a cloud software, and it actually creates it. But my dad, who we do the same thing with the same job, I've always said to him, how long until I have, a tripod base that's a Roomba and I just let this thing go, right? I'm like, that exists. Somebody just has to do it. And then I started looking at something else. So for, what's the work I'm looking for? For like utility surveys. So utility surveying companies actually have drones that have these LiDAR devices on them. And they will fly the drones around pipelines and high tension lines and in and around switch stations and stuff like that. And they use this highly sophisticated measuring, not like LiDAR on a phone or like the low grade LiDAR on like a Matterport Pro 3 or like, mid grade like a Leica BLK 360. But they're using this like high grade, sub 1 millimeter or 1 millimeter, like you would see on these $100,000 cameras on like the big 4-prop drones. Because they're mapping and they're getting like wire sizes and stuff, or they're doing like mechanical systems in plants. And, anybody that's flown drone before knows like how far away is before like autopilot AI will just take over a drone flight, especially if you give it parameters on the map like, hey, here's 4 points, scan everything under 100 feet in this area. That's already there, right?
Yeah.
So I could see a lot of my work boiled down to, instead of me spending, I just spent 3 days, and I already had plans. I just spent 3 days in a mall at a commercial store surveying it and confirming and laying out all this MEP equipment and doing a floor plan and a ceiling plan and all this stuff that our client required, drawn elevations and stuff. How much longer till I show up, pull the drone out, and it just flies around the store in like an hour, 2 hours, and then renders in my 3 days of work just turned into like half a day of work.
And it's just going to get quicker and quicker.
And it'll probably be better. Because it's going to get everything to the exact detail, like higher detail than we require. I get stuff to the detail that we require, right? Because that's how the job works. You have specifications, you go there and you work to the specification because that's what the client's paying for. That's what I'm being paid for. Nobody's going to care. Obviously, you want quality work. You always strive to do your best, but there's doing your best is doing what's required, right? So if I were to sit there and detail out something that's just totally pointless, nobody wants it. Nobody wants to pay for it. Nobody wants to pay me for it. It's just not part of it, right? But
if I can interject, there's something that I was just thinking about as you're talking about that. Anybody who's always on the cutting edge of technology, that you're constantly dealing. You're either going to be constantly complaining or just being, running defense for that piece of tech because it's always going to be running problems. I actually have slowed down with staying on the cutting edge because I got sick and tired of always dealing with problems. But the thing was, whenever you have those problems and that sends some sort of data back to the programmer or whoever's coding it, they are then having to fix it and make it better, and that person's always there to do it. The interesting thing is here is with somebody going on that cutting edge, we're now training these things. So you're going to say, oh, well, this is annoying, and you're going to be sending that feedback to basically replace you even more. Everything you send feedback to is going to be, you're helping it. Kind of like how Tesla is using all the footage and all the data that they're gathering from people driving to learn how to teach the car to do that itself. Exactly. It's like everything we're doing to help things before still kept a person involved, and that on both ends, both your end and the technology end, is going to slowly being relieving the human element of it, not just you. Oh, of course. You know what I mean? Like, that's weird to be in the field of technology and you're basically writing your replacement.
Yeah, I mean, like I hand draw all of my stuff on an iPad with an Apple Pencil in an app called Notability, which is like a note-taking or drawing app, and they're very obviously, watching what I do and watching what all their users do to make improvements. Yeah. Every space that I go to that I do my Matterport scan to, those are always getting improved and getting used for stuff, obviously. But yeah, so I think that that's probably the future of, and I've been talking about this with my dad and a couple other techs that work for our company. Eventually, that's what it's going to boil down to. I think that it might be a long, a little bit of a longer transition. I think that the technology is going to be there for it, but back to my point is kind of why I set up, hey, the Roomba technology already exists for this tripod to move around. Like already this scan that I do where I pick it up and move it, 6 to 8 feet or whatever and go around and I scan 200 points inside this, 15,000 square foot building. Obviously the technology technically already exists for it to do that by itself, but is it practical or is it there yet for implementation? No, not yet. So just because the technology is there, doesn't mean that it's going to be everyday stuff. Sure, it might be for someone, and the drone stuff already exists, but people aren't using it for that yet. And it's not because nobody's thought about it. It's just maybe it's not practical yet. Mm-hmm. Kind of like I said, those those super high quality laser scanners are like $150,000 plus. And, it's technology. Anybody that's ever bought a new computer or a new phone knows that in a couple of years, maybe it's not cutting it anymore. So that's a big investment for it to be worth it, depending on the product and the price point that you're selling at. So there's stuff like that. As a whole, though, I'll say that AI is going to be massive. It's going to change the way that we live our lives forever. And I don't think it's going to make the difference that some people think it will, as far as like nobody's going to have a job to do, work won't exist. I mean, we could, if we sat here and brainstormed, we could go down 100 industries that probably don't exist anymore, or use like, a 20th of the workforce that they did 100, 250 years ago, not even that long ago, not even go back 250 years ago, just whole industries that use much less people because of mechanized machinery or automation. And life is better, quality is better, jobs and job conditions and wages are better, job availability is better, job mobility is better. Humans are good at adapting. They are, we're not good at, staving off things that are happening for no reason.
When the Industrial Revolution happened, I'm sure there were people like myself saying, this is different than whatever came before that.
Of course.
And I'm going to remain that guy that's now, just like many before me, saying, no, this time is different. And I truly believe that this time really is different. But also I understand the fact that I might be just like all those other guys in the past.
So maybe, I think the one, I will say this, the shock that is going to happen that hasn't happened yet before is that this is going to hit hardest mid-level white collar jobs first. So
I think
this AI
lowest and retail
and low end
retail, customer service, all those things.
2 point. I mean,
we've already moved everything over to these annoying calls we get from people that can barely speak English that all have these white American names, right? And we know they're obviously not named John when they could barely speak English, right?
Yeah.
So they're already doing that because it's cheaper. I remember years ago, Google released a video of, they said, hey, to a personal assistant, and they said, hey, can you, set an appointment for so-and-so for the hair, for a haircut. And it called up, and it didn't just say, hi, I am so. It said, oh, hey, I'm trying to, for my client.
Yeah.
And it was like,
because everyone would call up on the robocaller.
Yeah. And there was like that weird moment where the person goes, okay, let me check. And the voice goes, and like just little things that a person would do to make it seem more real. And it's just mimicking us. It's not like people have to invest into these large amounts of machinery and then it has to be built. This is going to be something that overnight, boom, you could just transfer everything over. You could be setting it up on the backlog of the parameters that you need for your specific company.
Yeah.
And then overnight, there's no need for any human. And I think that's the scary part is, and not to cut you off, but I want to hear your thoughts on this specifically is, as far as, in my question, I was also asking, anything we could do to, not to prevent, but prepare for this. Do you think that government should get involved or regulation should be put in place to slow the growth? And is that good or bad? And that's where me as a small government-minded individual is starting to see maybe I want to, lean into government and regulation on this one.
That's dangerous.
It is. That's scary to me. Because where does that stop? But also, what's the implications of it not slowing it down?
Well, yeah. So my question is just, when has that ever worked with anything before? And not just American government, any government ever. And I don't think there's a good answer to that.
The government's already, if I'm not mistaken, gotten involved in slowing down the automated drivers for trucks, because right now the technology exists from what I'm aware of.
Sure, but that's a little bit different.
Why?
Well,
I'm not arguing. I'm just curious.
Well, no, that's a little bit different because they've slowed it down to a point of like, hey, you can't just send these out like you have to meet these requirements, you have to log this many hours on closed courses, you have to do, because they're just sending out a driverless vehicle that could potentially just decide to drive 100 miles an hour and mow down people in crosswalks, right?
Yes.
But, you know, the AI thing is a little bit different than that. You know, there's not necessarily physical danger at risk. I mean, I guess you could say like, oh, like what if it, you know, movie stuff, like what if it hacked grids or took over drones or machinery, blah, blah, blah. Which, not to sidetrack, although it's my favorite thing to do, but have you heard about the floating independent nation that they're building?
No.
Oh.
What country?
I don't think it's country. I think it's, or maybe it's a conglomerate of countries. I think it's people. So their plan is to put out this like aircraft carrier sized ship that's just going to float on international waters. And basically a ship is going to be a giant AI supercomputer.
I don't know much about it, but I've read a couple articles.
And it's supposed to have its own army of unmanned drones to protect itself.
That's interesting. I don't know how much of this is true. But yeah, I've read a couple like very ad-driven
don't you like to
things. It's weird.
Like believe it's true because it's interesting, but then also believe that it's not true because it's scary.
It is, but why wouldn't we go that route? That totally makes sense. That even if it's not true yet, that it's possible. That's where we're headed.
Could be.
Look at the way, like, look at the things that upset people right now. Mm-hmm. Police brutality. You can throw the facts out till you're blue in the face, and it doesn't matter. People look at it and say, "Well, I seen a video on the internet that said otherwise." And
well, of course,
fine. And that's the stuff that I'm noticing is going to drive civilization more than facts. I think that's just where we're at now. And I don't accept it in my life, but I can be real when I look at where the future's going, and it's not going to be fact-driven at this point for a lot of things. So things that are dangerous, like, you know, cop. It's dangerous to be a cop, and it's the people believe that it's dangerous to have cops. A lot of people, a lot of squeaky wheels. So I could see cops being implemented, you know, as an AI, not necessarily like a RoboCop, but like maybe a surveillance drone that's going around looking at people's faces, watching things, alerting that something's going on, maybe being, you know, given some non-lethal weapon that it could shoot out at people. And it's like, where does that go from there? Because once that's accepted and people are born into that, then the next step is easier to go into. Because it sounds terrifying. So an unmanned AI ship sounds totally believable with an AI army, and it's scary.
Yeah, I mean, so there's so many different directions with this, right? So I mean, think about search results, or, you know, information manipulation by, you know, that's not by the government, right? So, you know, Google search results, or, you know,
Well, they're
not just Google, Bing, Yahoo. Does that still exist? I don't know. Search results are obviously manipulated and obviously biased towards stuff. You know, especially when you start comparing to at least what advertises to be, you know, unbiased search engines. You search the same things up on like DuckDuckGo versus Google versus Bing. You know, obviously you're getting different things. Different advertisers pay to get to the top. Even down to, I travel a lot for work, and, you know, a lot of times, you know, I'm in areas I don't know. I'm just going to Google Maps and I'm hitting restaurants to see what's around me. And I'll get a list and I'll scroll through pages and then like not see something that I want, or like maybe I'm like looking for a certain thing and it doesn't come up, and then I'll, you know, get in the car to pick the thing that I just settled on, and I'm going to drive to lunch, and I get around the corner and the thing that I wanted to be there is just right there.
So it's
right?
not showing you
it's not showing me it for whatever reason, probably because these other people have search optimization.
Yes.
So that's what I mean about searches are biased, right? So, but then on the other hand, I've gone to search for, both from left and right, but I've gone to search for like specific political things, or like where I even have like 3/4 of a quote of somebody, or like, you know, hey, this person said, this, or you search blah blah blah, and then you put the quote in, and like you can't find the specific thing. And I have to dig to like 5 pages deep before I find it, and then when I find it, it's just there, right? And I'm like, this is obviously buried, right? So I feel like stuff like that already exists.
Big time.
Probably due to government involvement of some kind, or if not, people that are, just acting on their own manipulation. And I feel like that's where the government, regulation of AI will be the problem. Because right now, I actually think that people like you and I stand to gain the most from AI, because it's going to, if it's left open and it's pure, right? Which is probably impossible at the end of the day.
Right now we're at the beginning stages, and that doesn't exist. In fact, OpenAI, the name OpenAI was supposed to be open source. As soon as they had the ability to make money, it's now closed. But they kept the name comically. I feel like they just showed us right off the bat that is not going to happen. It's gonna be some weird version of it that is going to be out there on 4chan or some weird place that you have to go to get it. And I don't know. I'm sure they're not going to want us to use it, and they're going to be fighting against it.
Yeah,
like a free, open sourced AI.
Yeah, exactly. So like stuff like that, of course, that's tough, and it's everything's motivated by money, right? But I guess my point is that while even if it is closed like that, I would rather it just be held by private competing companies rather than the government telling all of the private competing companies to do the same thing.
Oh, that's what I meant government involvement trying to hide the other ones from us, not the business.
Yes,
people.
I don't want that.
Yeah. Because we know, like, if the government's not involved, there's apps out there that there's going to be that one hero that puts it out for free. Or there's going to be that one game that finds a different way to monetize, to give you the game for free, the base game for free, and have the stores like the free-to-play stuff where they're making an insane amount of money, but you could just play the game for free. So there's always those people out there that are going to do those things. It's when the government gets involved and things start actively getting buried on a level that one individual company can't do. That's what scares me. But yeah, it's weird. I don't know. I don't want the government to be involved, but at the same time, it does freak me out to watch an entire industry just disappear. And it's not like it's just one industry. It's not like somebody.
Does it disappear or does it change?
I think it disappears.
Like what? What industry do you think would disappear? Just to push back on you.
I'm going to name a bunch of them.
Okay.
Truck drivers.
Okay.
I think, all right, so they already have the technology to where a truck driver would stay local and just pick up the load at the end of the highway. All the highway and long overnight driving would be done. The highway miles would be done by AI. That could be done right now. In fact, they showed it to us, I think, in 2015 in the Wolverine movie, where they manipulated it to try and kill somebody. Okay. Anyway, that was actually a real model where there's no engine, there's no like cab. It's just, it looks like a freight just riding on the highway. Things like that. So that changes that industry only until it's able to then go from the highway to the actual dock, right? So maybe that's a bad. That's a bad example. Let's go to customer service for like fast food restaurants. Fast food restaurants can overnight need nobody in the front end and very quickly need nobody in the back end.
Okay.
And then you also have taxi drivers, Uber Eats, deliveries, all these things that are just consuming more fuels that I don't think we need to have all these cars on the road. Think about all the traffic that's involved for things that we don't need, right? Deliveries will be made much quicker, especially for shorter items. Drones can be doing it. So I'm not giving one example here, and this is probably not the best answer, but I'm thinking like low-level jobs that take nothing but a person pressing buttons, as long as it's something simple like that, instantly replaced. So let's just say every customer service on the phone can be replaced in an instant.
Okay.
That's a lot of people.
So, but to get back to that, most of the jobs have already been outsourced, right? And also, maybe they're not the most desirable jobs that exist anyway.
Yeah, and that's a great point.
Or there might be other types of similar jobs, or just something that's easy to transition to get out of it. So, I mean, anybody who's ever done customer service knows there's long wait times to even talk to somebody, and when you do, they're really just trying to push you off the phone because they probably have an hour-long backlog of calls to keep up on. So maybe that's just solving a problem instead of eliminating an industry. And it's probably something that they'll trickle on slow, because the last thing that anybody would want to do is, that already has a customer service that's busy, at least, would want to, just full stop and then have it not work the way they want and then have to restart again. The truck driver thing, as far as like long haul trucking that is, scheduled, I could see that for a lot of like a lot of cargo stuff. But as far as like, flatbed hauling and like heavy hauling and stuff,
I don't mean cargo.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, like which is like the big box trailers for people that don't know. A lot of that, yeah, I could see that.
Pilots, anybody that has to pilot any vehicle,
but again,
including planes, ships.
Again, though, right? So that's already an industry that has been struggling and has been continuing to struggle more and more and more to keep up with its labor force, right? For years, truck drivers have been in higher and higher and higher demand. So again, I think at least in the very onset of it, for the first many years, it's going to solve a problem that already exists rather than ruin something that's thriving. Like, in fact, it's not thriving. Especially for those repetitive drivers that are going to make those long things, because the truck drivers that exist are local truck drivers, right? And they're going to be harder to automate.
Well, I use a lot of those examples.
It's going to take a lot longer to get a truck driver that has to go from, the middle of New Jersey into New York City every day. That's going to be a lot harder to AI than it is to get a truck driver that goes from, near Philadelphia at a warehouse to near Pittsburgh at a warehouse on the turnpike. And those are the truck drivers, or, let's not do in-state, but, let's do states away, somewhere that has to go from Philadelphia to Denver and back to transport stuff. Those truck drivers, people don't want to be them. And someone that travels for work, I understand, kind of sucks, right? So I think that will solve more problems.
So to be fair, I use that example to relate to more people listening. Mm-hmm. I consider the low-level jobs that I'm talking about, not low level of importance or anything like that to anybody's value, but as far as like what kind of skill it takes. I'm not saying it doesn't take some skill to do a lot of these jobs, but it's different than like a surgeon.
Of course.
Same with me. All my stuff is quickly learned.
But our first jobs were both at fast food.
Exactly.
I know what fast food takes. I know what food service takes. The hardest part is that people are jerks. The second hardest part is that you're on your feet over a fryer for 8 hours and you really don't get very long breaks. Very stressful, high demand, always moving. Right. I get it. I've been there.
I think that's stage 2. Stage 1 is anybody that's doing any kind of research, paperwork, things like that.
Yep.
Lawyers, coders, the people that are writing apps, like bankers. Anybody whose job is basically controlling something on a computer. I know I was saying that with some of the other industries,
data entry, deciphering, all of that
stuff. The other thing about this, that here's where all of the examples I'm giving, I am that guy that's yelling out just like in the past, and it's just that humans will adapt. The problem with this one is that I think there's going to be a very small window between the replacement of these industries. I don't think it's going to be, now this industry is replaced, and the only thing holding back literally every single job on the planet will be a physical being able to perform that task, because the brain of the operation, the AI, the artificial intelligence, will be here within a few years. Like easily. Like by next year, I think we'll have a better grip of how fast this stuff's coming, rather than just people on YouTube giving us examples, because everybody's guessing at this point. I am too. I'm just talking crap. But I think that by the end of 2024 or the next 1 or 2 years, I'd say we're going to have a real good grasp and actually be able to have good graphs of when certain things are going to be taking places. So right now we're just speculating.
Exactly.
But the technology is being built during that 2 years and during this time. So the ability to create something that can mentally replace every job in the world will be done very quickly. And then it's just going to be a race of who can create a physical, robot.
Yeah.
Some sort of robot.
Humanoids.
It might look like a humanoid, or it might just be like a little Roomba thing, like you said. Like I've talked about this before. There's a robot out there that can replace up to I think it's like the equivalency of like 4 janitors or like a 4-level building, and they rent it out for a few $1,000s a month. And it's basically this giant box with a couple arms, and it can clean toilets, it can clean spills, it can replace toilet paper.
Oh, yeah.
All these different things, clean messes, and it replaces basically. So say I had 4 janitors.
I have a video on my phone. I
can have just one that basically knows how to maintenance this thing and clean up some spill that it can't until it replaces that person.
So I have a video on my phone. I was working overnight in a mall, King of Prussia Mall, here right outside of Philadelphia. Enormous mall. I was working overnight, and you hear anybody that's ever seen one go by, or like maybe at like a Home Depot or something, they do them during the day. The big floor cleaning machines.
God, I hate the one. I'm thinking all the grocery stores.
Yeah, they're just scrubbing the floor, and they have the squeegee behind them, and they're sucking the water up. So it's cleaning the tile floors. I don't know offhand how many square feet King of Prussia Mall is. If it's 100,000, it's 1 million. Huge, lots of common area, and overnight there's like a dozen of those floor machines, and a person doesn't ride them anymore. And it wasn't even like it wasn't even a new machine. It was a device that was on top of the man-operated machine that was just designed to pull the levers and turn the wheel, and it had cameras, and it just cleaned the floors. And there was like a dozen of them rolling around the mall cleaning all the floors. So stuff like that has already been replaced. But
and these are small levels.
Well, it's small levels, but you know what? I'll bet that it was probably hard to find people overnight to do those jobs.
Or someone that's actually going to do the job when nobody's watching a job like that.
Well, yeah, and I mean, exactly. I mean, there's always that. It's like, the machine doesn't take vacation, the machine doesn't do this, it doesn't, cut the corners on purpose.
Well, I bet they have an exact amount of how much that's going to cost every month, every week, every hour to run.
Sure, and it's going to have downtime, and it's going to need repairs, and it's going to have to get replaced.
What I'm saying is you know how long that's going to take. There's not going to be a difference of like an employee's skill level. It's going to be always improving itself, and you know exactly what that cost is going to be, short of repairs.
Yeah. And, I don't want to do I'm not trying to do the trope of like, oh, nobody wants to work anymore, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it is technically, statistically true that now, Mike Rowe kind of harps on this, is that we have millions of able-bodied men between the ages of, might get us a little off, but between the ages of 18 and 55 or something like that, able-bodied, no physical disabilities, anything like that, just actively not looking for work. Like they just don't want to work. And that's like all-time high on, pure numbers per capita population. That is kind of wild. But, overall, lots of people are working. But less people are working these types of jobs that we're kind of talking about now, because they honestly have better work situations. Because those types of jobs are dying because they've been replaced by so many of these, technology and office jobs and stuff like that. So it's just the world is changing, right? I mean, there was the panic that existed in, the at the time enormous industry of ice farming whenever refrigeration was invented. Ice is still a multi-billion dollar industry, right? So,
but I created it in my own house.
Well, yeah, exactly. But it's still needed for stuff. Yeah. Logging. It's like, the chainsaw exists and trucks come in and it's like, oh, we don't need much. Well, you know what? We don't need as much loggers anymore, and logging is thriving more than ever. Actually, even with the adaptation of the feller buncher, right? Which is, if people don't know, a feller buncher is this big arm thing that attaches to the end of like 150,000 pound excavator, and it just grabs the tree and then a hydraulic chainsaw cuts under it.
Oh, yes.
And then it just lays the tree down in whatever direction it wants to. They don't work everywhere. Obviously, there's still loggers out there that are, hiking into the woods, especially for a lot of logging is now done selective logging in order to be totally sustainable.
So all these examples are good,
yeah,
but I think the difference is the percentage of people replaced is going to go from like
You think it's going to happen real fast?
Is
going to be the problem.
Say everybody freaked out because 10%, and 10% is 10%. That's human beings we're talking about. Say 10% gets removed from these things in the past. This is going to be like 10% day one, then 15%, 20%, 30, 40, 50, until it's like 90%. And that will be coming like where we can actively sit and watch it, and you're just waiting for your time to come.
It's possible.
That's where I think a lot of industries are heading, especially like a lot of the stuff we've talked about specifically. But if it is as bad as what I'm thinking, or what a lot of people are thinking, something you were talking about with a lot of people not wanting to work, I'm curious your thoughts, and this is what I really think about a lot, is because I'm being selfish, is if all these people are going to not have to work, well, UBI, Universal Basic Income, is something I am not for right now. What if the world changes so much that it is where, say it, all right, so this is going to be hypothetically because we don't know what's coming. Say AI is as bad as a lot of people are saying, including myself, believe, that very quickly, say in the next 5 years, there's going to be a massive overhaul of the amount of jobs being done by humans to artificial intelligence, to the point where there is an insane amount of people out of work and there is actually no jobs available. Universal basic income, when these things start happening, is already on the tip of a lot of people's tongues. And I think that's what's going to be pushed. And I'm wondering, I'm not talking about the way that we implement that because I think it sounds crazy. But if something like that was to be implemented, what happens to me and you who are still out there working? Like I'm not going to be replaced first.
We're stolen from.
Are we going to be stolen from, or are we going to be incentivized
UBI, then yes.
to take the UBI and then work on top of that? Will we be collecting double income? Because if not, I'm like, why would I work?
So, well, exactly.
Other than to not look like a bum to you and my friends. Because that's what it'll boil down to, is I don't want to have the embarrassing... But that's only going to last so long before I'm like, I want to spend time with my family.
Well, there's that.
I just think capitalism is at stake with AI. That's a big claim, but I think it's a possibility. As we know it.
Okay, so I'm gonna butcher this quote. Maybe I should look it up, or should I just butcher it?
Butcher it.
All right, butcher it. So there's this quote by Dostoevsky, who is like a Russian philosopher.
Yes.
If anybody doesn't know who he is, and he says, if you give man such economic prosperity that all he has to do is sleep, eat cakes, and perpetuate the species, then here's where I'm going to butcher it. Basically, he ends up saying that out of nothing else but pure spite, they're just going to create problems for themselves. It's like people that have everything they could ever want, that don't have the troubles in the world, they're just going to create problems out of spite.
Is that not evident now?
Well, but I guess what I'm getting at is why would you work? That's human being. We need to work. We need to be doing things. We need a task. We need purpose in life. And I think part of that is producing something, working towards something, and that's a natural drive that I think in general, if you were to look at qualities of people and their outcomes in life, the people that are driven to do stuff like that, and not just, and whether or not it's, out of, like, I'm not just going to say, oh, people that don't want to do this or lazy or whatever, maybe it's a, trust fund kid or someone that's just well off or doesn't have to do much. Look at lottery winners, right?
Yeah, that's a crazy thing to look at.
Most of them immediately fall apart. And you know what? It's probably all the ones that don't have that purpose yet, right? They just create problems for themselves out of spite and they lose it all, right? So I think that's why we continue to work. All that was to get to that specific point. It's like, why would I work? Or, other than to like look good for my friends? No, like you work.
Well,
because
why would
it's
I
good
do the
for
job
you.
I'm doing now? rather than go work on something creative for myself or go build a house for myself in my space. Like if I had all the time in the world, I'd probably want to learn how to build. I'd want to buy a plot of land and build. I'd go there 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day.
So that's where I think that, because I would probably feel the same way, right? But eventually maybe that would kind of start creeping in, that complacency.
And I mean, I'm jumping. This is
I
like
would
real...
start, I could see myself starting to lose the drive to get up and go. I mean, heck, if I have to get up and go to work, I get out of bed way easier than when I have to get up and do chores around the house, right? Both of us. I'm sure that's true.
100%.
Probably true for almost everybody, unless you're like David Goggins or something like that. And so that creeps into everybody. I mean, if I won the lottery or some secret inheritance from some relative that I don't know because I'm getting money, I would think that, I would, just go, I'd build my own house. I would do everything myself. I would, do these projects and live a different life, but serve the purpose of, family and fulfillment and stuff like that and helping others. And that would be my purpose. I would love to be able to do that. I probably still very physically work, and maybe it would be for other people or on my own property or to do things that would benefit my kids down the line. But
I guess what you're saying is the same mindset I have, is that you would be more center focused, right?
Exactly.
It would be work to fulfill you. My work fulfills me now,
Sure.
but it fulfills me because it creates a means of which I can have the life I want, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not the job itself that's giving me the fulfillment. It's what I get from the job. Right now, it's like a group of us keeping a well-oiled machine that someone else before us started. And I love being a part of it. I love keeping that well-oiled machine going. We all benefit when we all do good. Mm-hmm. I do good, they benefit. They do good, I benefit. Our bonus is reflected at the end of the year based on how much work we do during the year. So, and I think about that from January to December. I'm constantly thinking about that. So there's a team aspect. There's something I'm a part of, but I am working for one person more than myself, and that would be the owner of the company. Now, I don't think like that on a daily basis, but if this new lifestyle was implemented or there was an option out, which I guess you could look at welfare. Look at how people do already react with it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going after any individuals. Especially growing up, I know a lot of people.
No, and 100%, I know a lot. I know that we 100% agree on this.
It doesn't help people in the long run.
In the long run, no. But in the short term,
it's probably a miracle to some people.
Even long to mid-range, those programs are necessary. I mean, we could get into, the degradation of society and how literally all of those roles used to be fulfilled better by charities and, religion and churches and stuff. I mean, even if you don't like religion,
that takes it back, something needs to do
it. Go look at history. Go look at current. I mean, who's taking, what type of organizations are taking in children and what type of organizations are feeding people and treating disease. And it's all religious stuff. I don't like a lot of religious organizations and beliefs in churches, even specifically with, under the Christianity umbrella. A lot of it's messed up. I get it. People are flawed. But that role was better fulfilled before the government stepped into it. However, in the society that we're in now, I think that welfare, all that has its place. However, it's obviously abused.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. It's like one of those things that I hate that it exists. I understand the necessity of it. But until I see something, I think it would be more of a replacement. It would broaden it. It would be a different name. It would have different guidelines. It would be a broadened version. I don't think you'd have both. Because it would be for the same purpose. Mm-hmm. So, I do believe, based on what I'm seeing now, that UBI will... if I had to bet my money on it, if I had to bet my money on something, I bet my money that capitalism will drastically change. UBI will be a normal thing that a lot of people that we know have it, and at first it will be stigmatized, and then it'll be accepted, and then it will be the norm. I guess the real thing is, what keeps people like me and you going at that point. It has to be some incentive, because if, I provide people with water. Most people,
Sure.
I think most people in the country are not on public water.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because
Well,
I've always grown up in the city. Well, maybe not most people.
So population-wise, but
Yeah.
area-wise,
most people are on
most people are not.
Yeah,
100%.
that's a good point.
Yeah, like nobody in Wyoming is on city water unless you live in like the one town that's in one city that's in Wyoming.
Right. So I provide drinking water for people, and a lot of times it's in emergency circumstances, and people very quickly realize, oh yeah, they go from thinking, oh, I don't have water, I can call tomorrow, until they go to flush a toilet, and that's all they got.
Yep.
So
Pressure pot only lasts so long.
yes. So people like me are important. That has nothing to do with me. That came out really weird. You know what I mean?
Very, very important.
There are jobs that we learned even during COVID. What was the term they used for all of them?
Essential workers.
Which really became everybody.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
I ended up being an essential worker. I fit under some umbrella of, construction. I mean, I think when you technically read the description, I wasn't supposed to be doing it. Well, I mean, I was.
Everybody was trying to make it themselves.
I was traveling, crossing state lines, so I was definitely not supposed to be doing my job, but
essential.
Yeah, essential.
So there are essential jobs. I think it was the example we just got a couple years ago during COVID was very silly, but there are essential jobs that we need to keep the country going.
Sure.
Like trash pickup. Even though I'm not in that anymore, I understand. Like, you could look back at the time in New York City when the trash guys went on strike. You could see some crazy photos of just a week in. It was crazy to look back. Those photos are. I love looking. I look them up every once in a while. It's just crazy to look at. Anytime I think about it, I'm probably gonna look it up tonight. But a cool thing to go pause this and go Google the New York trash strike.
Yeah, because they pick up every other day in most parts of the city.
Sometimes every day. Like the office buildings, they're there every single night.
Makes
and
sense.
some guys just do one street.
Yeah.
And they get paid, like their tips at the end of the year could be in the $10,000 to $20,000 from that building. Mm-hmm. That building, let alone the few that you don't. I mean, I don't know if I've talked about it before, but even me doing residential, my truck was pulling in about $25,000 in the month of December. And I was splitting that with one guy. Mm-hmm. It was awesome. And all cash.
Yeah.
So yeah, crazy thing. But anyway, that's totally off subject. I was just reminiscing those fun times. Where were we at? Oh, capitalism being changed and things like that. These essential jobs. These essential jobs, they're going to have to, if they're going to implement universal basic income. Again, this is all hypothesis based on hypothesis based. These things we don't know are going to be true. But if all of that does happen and UBI is implemented, these essential jobs, as they are, there has to be some sort of incentive to make somebody want to work, other than the fact that, we know that the human nature needs a purpose. There's going to have to be a financial incentive. So do we become the new white collar guys? Am I getting paid, $150,000 a year to go do the same job I'm doing now? I don't know. What's that?
Some trade jobs are already making that.
Well, I'm thinking about me specifically.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's like very niche. It's like, okay, you work in like New York or Chicago or LA and you're part of this specific trade in this specific union, you could do, $150K. Or if you own your own business, stuff,
Some of this is also fantasy for me, where I like to think all these guys that are just like lounging around all day on a computer in these $1 million homes I go into, I'd like to someday. Do you see the new South Park where the handyman?
Yes.
You saw? Okay.
I did.
So if you guys haven't seen this,
it's amazing.
It's like part of the future where
all of life is reflected in South Park episodes.
Oh, so true. Where like everybody forgets how to do everything. Like one of the characters is trying to fix his oven door, and he keeps asking Siri and trying to get, and everybody's paying the handyman extra cash to come to their job first, until he's basically getting $50,000 to go do put together some stupid little thing
to like hang a TV on the wall.
So these guys,
and then Randy is in his room. Hey Siri, can you fix my oven?
She's like,
no, I cannot do that for you. Hey Siri, why can't you fix my oven?
So fast forward, it's like it shows the advancement of the handyman. Then he comes around with fur coats, riding around in these like spinning wheels. Out. And then they become basically Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, because they're in the space war of who's going to get the space first. And it's funny, but...
And they're like two like redneck characters.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So that has definitely influenced the fantasy that I'm talking about right here, where I kind of would like to see where my work. I think it boils down to the fact that I feel like the physical work I put in, I'm not getting what I think I should get out of it. And that's not a reflection of my boss or my company. It's a reflection of the economy. Every dollar I make is taxed so heavily, and then I go to spend it. And it's like you've already taxed down my dollar on everything I've spent. And then the dollar that I'm going to spend, even the product itself is so inflated right now. I just feel like my dollar is worthless. I go to get a chicken sandwich at Chick-fil-A, and it's $7 for the sandwich. The sandwich.
Yeah.
Which I recently discovered, the spicy chicken sandwich deluxe. It's freaking delicious.
Yeah.
But it's $7, so it's not for me.
Yeah, and I mean, sound like old person saying this, but like we're not that old, and like when we were kids, we could leave church on a Sunday, and $7 we could both eat at Wendy's.
Oh,
a place.
Yeah.
So
Can you imagine having $7 at Taco Bell back in the day? Man, talk about a feast.
Dude, like kings, living like kings.
Now you can get yourself 2 tacos. No, it is crazy.
Yeah, just to get into a little bit of that, I
think that's part of it, though.
Yeah, so
on a
like
grander scale.
You said, you do well service, right? In systems and stuff. The average age of a plumber right now, Christy actually just sent me this. Average age of a plumber right now is 41 years old.
That's scary,
and it's getting older by like years every year.
It's a good job.
Yeah, and so that's a trade that is And if you look at electricians have been traditionally like one of the highest paying trades as far as like, basic construction trades. That's, without getting into like pipe fitters and, what do they call this? Like the structural steel guys and stuff like that, iron workers. And, without getting into, specialty stuff like that, electricians have always been kind of the higher paid ones. And to be fair, not only is it a physical job, maybe it's dangerous. Not as physical as others. Well, there's a danger factor, but it also takes a lot. It's the intellectual trade.
Oh yeah, a lot of math, right?
For sure, an electrician on the industrial level is an intellectual trade, like 100%. You got to know your stuff. And not that plumbing isn't, but and again, I'm excluding, pipe fitters and steam fitters and stuff like
Your
that.
Your average plumber.
Yeah, average home or industrial plumber that's, doing PVC, or even if you're doing no hub and up to 2-inch copper and higher pressurized lines and stuff like that. So plumbers have been catching up to and even starting to surpass electricians in that wage thing because the availability of them is getting lower and lower and lower. So some of those jobs are really catching up, and people are starting to make really good money with them. So yeah, I mean that is happening because I feel like it was a job that was just trade jobs were just so undervalued, and they were kind of like looked down on.
Mm-hmm. That has been shifting, though, like you said.
It has been shifting, but I mean, even when I first started, when I got into carpentry, you're telling your parents, friends, or whatever, what you're doing, and that you're not going to any more college than you already did, and you kind of get okay, you're gonna do that.
Yeah, we were right at the switch, right?
A little bit.
Like I think when we first got into those things, like when I was doing trade
now
school,
you hear that, and people are like, "Good, you should do that."
It was probably a little after I got into trade school. They were or in trade school. They were telling us like we are desperately needing people, but it hadn't caught on to everybody. Like society hadn't accepted it like a college boy.
And especially when you were at trade school, it's like people were saying that, like the old heads were saying that. It's like, oh, like crazy Uncle Johnny's saying we're in danger. We need more people in the trades. Well, I mean, we're kind of getting to the wave is still building, but like it, like in the South Park episode, it's going to crash, and people are going to feel it.
Absolutely. I mean, I look at even just the stuff I've learned in the plumbing that I'm doing, because I'm pretty much a plumber on a lot of respects. So
yeah, I mean, you do service plumbing for residential service work.
Yeah. So everybody calls me a plumber. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks I'm a plumber.
Mm-hmm. Oh, plumber's coming.
Yeah.
And you're like, ooh, okay.
Yeah. I don't argue it.
Yeah.
What was my point with that? Oh, I've the amount of stuff I've learned. I realized that like in the jobs I've done before, I really didn't know how to like. I know that was a joke with South Park, but I was that Randy character that didn't know how to fix like something would break, and it's like, what do I do? This is broken now. I don't have this anymore, and it's like, I always heard like the old timers saying, oh, they don't make things like they used to, or, you just buy it and replace it rather than fix it. But a lot of things are made to be replaced as opposed to fixing nowadays. But it's so weird to actually see that on a way where I can comprehend it. I understand, that only needs, some new bearings, or, that pump doesn't need to be replaced. We just fix this one part, replace this part and get it going again, or it just needs to be greased, or all these little things that I've realized how much waste we've created in society and how much more money it costs to be that mindset rather than what's the thing you said that your dad used to, put on you, the mindset of you can't, it was something silly like you can't afford to not know how to do that. How did he word it?
Man, I don't know if there was a specific phrase or not.
You had said something. You're like, my dad said that to me. You can't afford to not know how to fix that.
Man, I'm drawing a blank here. I'm sorry.
Anyway, no, it's all good. But that's the mindset, right? Like, unless you're making enough money to pay somebody to do all these things for you, you need to learn how to do them.
Well, it's you don't call the guy to come do that. You are that guy. Like, learn to be the guy that comes to fix your stuff, because we weren't able to call the guy to come fix the stuff. It's like, hey, and my dad knew how to do that, or at least knew how to do things that was enough to figure out how to do that.
Closer. This is what people can
Yeah. And so it's like, the water heater breaks. We're the guy that's going to do that, and we're going to figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't, where does that end? Next thing you know, you're paying somebody to come out and clean your vents.
Yeah, I know. Think about that guy.
So I'm going to give some text to that. I had been out of work for about 3 weeks because of the stupidest injury. I slipped getting into a van. I was on a job site that there was no lawn. It was like a construction site. There was a lot of mud. I had a thick layer of mud on my boot that I didn't realize. And when I stepped on the step, I actually stepped on mud. Yeah, plastic step. When I stood up, my foot just slipped, but I had already stepped up to the second step. So when I slipped, it happened so quick that my knee was already bent to get into the vehicle. So my knee I dropped right on my knee on the steel rail, like right above the step. Anyway, and it put all my weight. Basically my heel was touching my butt. Like my knee bent more than it's bent since I was a baby, probably. And I heard all sorts of cracking and noises, and I quickly couldn't walk.
Twisting and pulling.
So for 3 weeks, I couldn't bend my knee really that well. And something happened where I would run my dryer, and my dryer's in my basement, and I have a door that separates the basement up in my kitchen. And when we would run the dryer, it would steam up the basement to where you'd open up the basement door and like steam would come out. It wasn't a fire. It was definitely steam. I tried so hard to bend over and see what was going on. I moved the dryer out. Anyway, I went outside and found the vent was so clogged and caked with just like lint. I stuck my arm in as much as I could. I was thinking, well, I could put a vacuum down, but there were so many twists and turns within the vent line. I was like, I don't know what to do. So for $200 or $150, there was a guy who was going to come out, and it's like, I can either wait until I'm healed and fix this myself, which I knew how to do. I was like, but I couldn't. I got stuck on the floor for a couple minutes. I was like, this is so stupid. I'm going to hurt myself. I want to get back to work. So of course I pay this guy $150 to come out and do a job that I was already embarrassed he was coming out to. He comes while I'm out at a gun show, and your dad of all people decides to stop over and visit Jenny. And I was like, oh God. I remember hanging up the phone and realizing he was there, and I was like, please don't be there when David gets there. And because no matter, I knew I was going to get razzed regardless of my situation, because here I am walking around.
100%.
But I just couldn't bend. But he... Oh, and then to top it all off, it turns out the the connection to the vent is connected to the back of the dryer was disconnected. Mm-hmm. But I think I did that when I pulled it out. Anyway.
Yeah, probably.
But there are people who would have to call that guy because they couldn't understand to undo a couple bolts and just clean out the tubing. Like, so there is a lot of things that our society has given us. There are a lot of wealths and I don't know, privileges that we have.
100%.
And it goes back to that mindset you were talking about where, when somebody has
how much better is life?
We create problems.
Yeah.
And I think that is a lot of what society is doing now. Like the youth has it so good. I mean, we have it so good. And the youth is having it even better. Like every generation is getting better and better. But we're creating this weakened society. And it's scary that we're in a cycle that we can watch happened. That it's happened so many times. It's weak men create bad times create strong men create good times create weak men, and it goes back in a circle. And it's like, I hate when something like that is so on point, but you can go back and watch it. And
Yeah.
I feel like we were on the cusp or on the end of Good Times, and Good Times is now creating this generation of weak men that I think, I hate to say, because I don't think, well, maybe me more than you, I don't think we're weak men, but compared to the generation before us, they would probably look at us as weak. And so I think we're on the
100%.
we're on the tilting end of the downfall of the strong man.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thing to think about, especially having children.
I take a bathroom break.
Yeah, go for it.
Yes.
All right, all refreshed. So yeah, the weak men. Yeah, it's weird, but I guess we're gonna have to adapt and figure it out and fight it. But then there's a part of me that is like almost what's the term? It's not like maybe a nihilist, but like thinking, what's the point?
Yeah.
If that's
nihilism.
coming, like some of the things I want to fight against, it's like, what's the point? Like maybe I just need to focus inward on myself and my family, and that's all I can really do. But to think about it as a whole society, it's like society is progressing way too fast for me to attack that rather than just keeping my family in check and hoping that others like-minded are doing the same. And hopefully the children we create will be the bigger impact rather than me as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe them as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah, man, it's crazy. I mean, 100%, like, you're talking about looking at the people before, like, we are weaker than the men that came before us. A couple months ago, I was listening to this, like, Revolutionary War documentary. Actually, I think I sent it to you.
Is it the YouTube one? I've listened to it so many. I love it.
Okay.
I love it.
So,
do you remember what it's called for people listening?
it's from the History Channel. It's on the History Channel, and it's called like the men who built the nation, the revolution. I don't know. It's a revolution. It's like a 3-part Revolutionary War documentary from the History Channel on YouTube.
It is the
It's
best
great.
history, like whatever you want to call it, I've ever heard in my life. I love it. Anyway,
So, whenever they're talking about the Battle of New Orleans and there being there's like a whole group of troops, whatever it was like 1,000 people or something, and they had to go from Pensacola, Florida to New Orleans, which don't know if people know this, but you have to go, there's a lot of just swampland and streams and water to go through, not much land. And the way that the narrator, from letters that troops had written home and, commanders and generals had sent to document everything that's happened, and just knowing the topography down there, they're talking about wading through like chest-high water infested with probably way more alligators than there are now.
that's terrifying.
And mosquitoes and bugs. And they're just talking about these terrible conditions. Most of the men did not have footwear, so they're bare feet. And they're talking about how they were like ripping parts of their shirt off and tying it onto their feet to get through there. And everybody just has like rot foot and stuff.
And no food.
Yeah, no food. Literally, I mean, this is people during Revolutionary War would literally like chew on the leather from their boot in order to feel satiated of some kind. So just poor supplies. And then it's like, oh, and by the way, they traveling with them were 2 1,200-pound cannons that they had to build improvised bridges for over the water as they went. So not only were they like marching through this with their musket and their gear and whatever type of supplies they did or didn't have with them, they were by hand making improvised bridges to move like wheeled cannons, like that had wooden wheels with metal strapping, like not something that's going to roll nice on bearings. And obviously would take a lot of men to lift 1,200 pounds. I mean, you've been with me when we tried to manhandle like a large safe that did not weigh 1,200 pounds. That's a lot of work.
It is.
And they just did it, and they went on to fight a battle for a war that was already over, turns out. But yeah, so
Do you know how I know I'm a weak man?
We are
Oh,
weak.
yeah.
We have no idea what it's like because of the luxuries that we
you're
live
right.
in. Heck, our parents grew up in homes that didn't have air conditioning because that's normal.
That's weird to think about,
It's
too.
so just the fact that air conditioning is standard in vehicles that we have.
Do you know what my equivalent was when in my mind when you were talking about crossing the river? My first thought was, I remember at Oregon Trail when you'd come along in the video game. Remember you'd come across the river and it goes, would you like to do this that would take this
all
much
died.
time? Or do you want to try and float across? And I roll the dice. Every time I try and float
time.
across, and 90% of the time, we float down the river and we lose a couple people.
Yeah.
That's my equivalent.
That's what life was like.
I mean, I'm joking, but
Hearing about frontiersmen
It's hard to
or
picture that.
The story, if anybody wants to listen to it, story of Daniel Boone, which is also part of that history, Men Who Built America, is incredible, the stuff that they went through. Like there was one thing where they were talking about how they realized that they were going to be short on salt for the winter. And I was like, okay. And it's like talking about going out to get the salt. And then I started explaining the process that they would do to find the salt. And again, this is like territory where like, oh, the painting on my cloth map stops. Mm-hmm. Right? And we're here. So like total frontiersmen, no electronics. They're just going. Again, we're weak. I couldn't navigate, without natural conveniences. If this was wilderness, I couldn't get home right now without streets. Okay? If I had nothing but uncharted maps and I had, coordinates, I wouldn't know how to read degrees. I mean, I can read a compass, but like to actually read a compass and degrees and minutes and seconds, I can't do that.
sometimes a storm comes and I'm in unknown territory. My GPS stops working, and I all of a sudden become lost for the moment. Mm-hmm. I'm sitting there trying to hope that I can pull up a map.
Funny story about that in a second, but yeah. So it's like they were short on salt for the winter, and it describes what they had to do. So basically, they went to find a mineral spring where the water was coming up and bringing the minerals directly into the stream or whatever. So it was like a high concentration of minerals where they're going to get salt. And they were like, okay. And they had to boil water. Right. So they're in wilderness in, I think this was either in Tennessee or Kentucky. I'm kind of losing track of my history here. But so they had to boil water in a pot that they had, and they were like, for every 30 gallons of water that they boiled, which is a lot to boil with
Especially
fires
using fire.
and 30 gallons of water they boiled, they would get between 3 to 5 pounds of salt. And then it was like, oh, they could do and they could do like 10 of those a day or something like that. And it's like they're making really good progress. They only needed then it was like they only needed like 5,000 pounds of salt to make it through the winter. And I was like, what? I'm like running the quick math on that. And I'm like, are you insane?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Like, what? And, the story is that they got ambushed by some Indian tribes while they were there. And, he'd go through the gauntlet, all this stuff. But anyway, that's all besides the point. But yeah, that's wild. And no, we are soft. We are weak. We have no idea. I would go insane if I didn't have air conditioning for a summer.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
It's funny. Like when I think about the things I wouldn't want to live without, it's ice. And that's like, it's hard to think about, but that is a, luxury to have ice. I remember when I went to Majorca for a semester of college, and they don't do ice in that. I don't know if it's a lot of Europe, but
It's
I know in Spain,
most of Europe, from what I understand, yeah.
ice was not a thing. And I had to find somebody at a hala, which is like a thrift store, and I was able to find...
Even when we were in Russia, we'd buy drinks and stuff, and
ice,
just all be warm.
Yeah, I was able to find like little trays to make ice, but it was like a very uncommon thing, and I would just... It would be like my favorite thing in life was my little ice trays and having a nice cold glass of water. Everybody else drank everything room temperature. It drove me nuts. And air conditioner. There was no such thing. But anyway, yeah, definitely soft. But moving on with the AI, and again, I know for those of you guys listening, and for Adam, you too, I wanted to talk about this with you specifically because we are not experts, just from our perspective, because this is what a lot of people are either thinking about
More
now,
of like
or
the everyman perspective.
The everyman perspective, like I want to know, because I'm thinking about this all the time, and I want to know if anybody else is thinking about it. I want to know if you're thinking about it, or if any listeners. So let us know if this is something that's on your mind as well.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm thinking about it all the time.
I'm probably a little bit more on the obsessive.
One point that I has been in the back of my mind to kind of wrap up on that, continue your wrap up on that, I guess, is that at least what I know about now, all of the AI that we have is all input based, and it's just searching inputs
of what we provided,
of
right?
what we provided, and there have been a lot of AI is. It has more tasks that it can do now. It's learning to do different tasks is kind of how it's exploding, and that's happening real fast. They have found that in a lot of cases, it's becoming dumber because it is just pulling from an AI created input and an AI created input, and as that happens, it becomes more and more inaccurate.
Closed circuit. It's almost like an echo chamber of itself.
Exactly. So it's echo chambering itself. And they found this because it was a certain chat GPT model that they found. They were giving it certain math problems, and then they were giving it like tests to see how it was doing, like as it was learning. And it actually, after a point, like a peak in the graph, it started performing worse and getting the math problem wrong more often because it was finding more inaccurate information, and then they determined that inaccurate information came from a trail of mostly accurate AI.
Yeah. So most of the things that I'm basing all my thoughts
I'm
off
finding
of
that in articles that I read too, by the way.
Oh, yes. Tim Pool talked about this, about how AI articles are being written based off of other AI,
and they're terrible.
Boards. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So something will come up about like something that I know a little bit about. And it, I was reading an article, and it was like 5 best diesel engines of the last however many years. And I was like, okay, I'll read this. I want to see what their opinion is, because I have my own opinions, you know. I've driven a lot of different diesel trucks. Friends either own them or I own one. So I was like, I'll read that. I'm a little bit of a motorhead. I like that kind of stuff. And it just talks about all these things. And the ones on the list made other than a couple of them, made absolutely no sense. And the ones that were on there were, according to its own description, were on there for the wrong reasons. And I'm like, this is clearly like a trash written AI article that wasn't proofread.
It's funny. I forget the terminology, but there's a name for it, and it's the idea of like the example given for the analogy is you're reading a newspaper, and you get to the section that is, say, about a field of work that you happen to be involved in, right? Or say you know a lot about this one region of the world, and you're reading all the paper, and you're like, oh wow, that's interesting. Oh wow, that's interesting. You're reading through the business section, then you get to an article about a region of the world or something that you're very familiar with. And you read it and you're like, all of this is incredibly inaccurate and wrong.
Yeah.
And you're like, that article is bogus. And then you move on to the next page of stuff you're not
interested.
Oh, wow. And you forget that quickly that the whole thing could be like that. Anyway, there's like a terminology for that specifically. But I'm starting to see that more and more. And it makes me think of the dead internet theory, which I don't want to get into now, but if it's a fun rabbit hole to go down. But basically that the internet died, I think it was 2015, 2016-ish.
Okay.
And that most of the people you see online, the comment sections, everything pretty much but the videos, all of the discussion boards and everything you're seeing is actually not real people. And there's a lot of evidence to say that is actually true. That a lot of
that it's all bots.
All bots. And some of the bots are way more advanced than just the ones that are obviously a bot, But that's just going to get worse.
An example would be on Instagram, like New York Post. If you open up the comment section, it's like the first 10 comments are all the exact same thing. Verbatim.
And those are the obvious ones.
Yeah.
Then there's many more that are putting out their own fresh ideas, right? And then more bots are commenting on that. And this, I put a little bit of money into promoting some YouTube videos. Not much, just to see what it would do. And it was like all the stuff that came in, I was like, I think they're farming bots.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think I just paid for bots. And it really pissed me off. But I was like, well, this is stupid. And then I started looking into it, and a lot of people were explaining the situation, how it works, and how a lot of it is bots. Anyway, it's just it's interesting to think about. But a lot of the stuff that has brought this mindset on isn't really the stuff that we've seen, like the TED Talks or the showcases or the whatever they call them, the any kind of thing where they present it to the public as, hey, this is the AI we have, or ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It's more of the studies that I've read about the results of certain things. Like here's an example. they have, through AI, been able to read brain waves, hooking people up to brainwave, to their brains, and show them images, and then put input. Hey, the person is looking at a blonde woman walking across the street. Hey, the person is looking at a red car driving by. Here's the things in the background. It has so much information knowing what the person's looking at and viewing their brain that they have actually been able to have somebody sit in front of something, watch an image, and the AI, through just the brain activity, can give a rudimentary description of what the person's looking at. And I thought, that's incredible. That's like reading brains. Mm-hmm. Then it went further, and this is where I went off the deep end of the possibilities are endless. They played, and you can look this up just by my description. It's very easy to find. They played audio for people, and they had the same thing where it knew different ways that the person responds to different audio and knew the audio. Then they take one where it doesn't know the audio, has no way to listen to it, nothing. It's just looking at the brainwaves now. It's collected a lot of information. And it watched the brain activity of somebody listening to I Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. Mm-hmm. Then it was asked to recreate what the person was listening to. Uh-huh. It recreated, if you've ever heard the song before, it's not going to be something you'd say, oh, I love this song. But if you heard what the AI created as far as using tones, it even created some tones for the vocals. It was playing Wish You Were Here. It played the song.
That kind of stuff is wild.
It's crazy. And it starts making me think about the possibility. And then I start going into super conspiratorial. And I do want to touch on it a little bit, but for time's sake, we'll move on. But that's the kind of stuff that's really like, it's more advanced where we haven't seen it implemented yet, but I know what possibilities, and just even know that that's what they're looking into. It's like, well, what's the stuff I don't know about? Yeah, so my mind just goes down rabbit holes.
I mean, it's always been said, and whether or not it's propaganda or not, I would tend to think that it's probably not based on just how things have revealed themselves. Is that, they always say that whatever you're hearing about now, like U.S. military and secret technology, had and was developing 40 years ago. Right now, everybody in this, everybody listening to this would, I say this like, oh, like they have a satellite that could, read newspaper print or like text from space. We're like, oh, yeah, of course.
We were kids hearing about that.
Of course, yeah, like of course they do. Well, in the 90s when I was like 6-7 years old, we were our family friend, and the dad worked on he didn't work for NASA, but he worked for some kind of company that I think he made gyroscopes or something, or he's an engineer that designed gyroscopes, or I don't know. He made something that went on a satellite, and it held like this 4,000-pound camera that was just this giant lens, and he was having a conversation with my dad and explained to him in like the mid to late 90s where he was like, just nonchalantly like, oh yeah, that's like well known in the industry that, and remember, this is before anybody had, ever seen
even a cell phone,
Google Earth, or like seen satellite images other than like rudimentary stuff that you saw on the news, right? Before cell phones, all that stuff. He's like, oh yeah, like, there's hundreds, thousands of live satellites in the sky that could zoom in onto a park bench and read the small print on a newspaper. He's like, yeah, of course they do that. Just nonchalant. And, other than being a guy in the industry, how would you know about that? Mm-hmm. And he's just like, oh yeah, of course they have that. So I'm like, okay, that looking back on that in retrospect, they had that for a long time.
Yeah. And I think about that even with like my DJI drone. That thing is an incredible piece of technology that the price I got, it doesn't make sense. Talk about getting a value for your dollar. It was expensive, but what that thing is capable of, I feel like I'm owning a piece of the future in my hands. It doesn't match the level of anything else I own. It makes my phone look like a piece of junk. And I'm talking about this little drone that's meant for play.
They're amazing.
It's meant for play. Mm-hmm. That thing blows my mind.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is old and outdated, and it's affordable because it's so old that now it's affordable for the consumer.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I do want to keep on AI, but I do want to shift it to. Well, first let me lay out this. Have you seen what AI can do as far as art and creating visuals and?
Yeah.
So
And
not
quickly.
only can it see what the brain can do, it can now create its own imagery. You can tell it something. So I've actually messed with this a lot with all different, basically all the major ones that are out there right now, like Dolly, and I've used them all to a point and messed with them and learned how to do different prompts and finding different models that I could basically do a copy and paste and then add to it. And a lot of it's just me watching videos and then adding my own prompts. And I've been really impressed with what I've been able to do. And I am just the guy following instructions. 90% of what I'm doing is basically copy and paste. Copy and paste.
Just to explore it.
Exactly. But then I'm seeing what I'm able to do, and then what I can take from that. It's like I'm nobody. And really, this stuff is just advancing, and it's getting better and better. Like fingers and like any kind of like smaller limbs used to be really silly looking. And when you're creating an image of a person, now they're getting better, and like fingernail, everything's getting more detailed. If you're doing like any kind of humans, that in images. But then I started seeing where they were able to create videos from an image. So there was one thing where they showed a landscape, right? It was a picture of a landscape, and they basically put it into this program. I forget what the program was. I did not use this one. I watched it, a tutorial of it, or an example of what it can do. They showed a picture of a landscape. It had like a lake and some mountains and a sun, sunrise or sunset. And then it created a video where it was basically like a bird's eye view of like an airplane, say, flying through. So you're basically soaring through, and you went past the mountains, and it kept creating more landscape that matched the original image. And I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then you start now this all really started in like January of 2023. We didn't even hit 2024 yet, and I've already seen like 3 to 5 second video clips that are becoming, they're not there yet, but are becoming indistinguishable. There's only little things you're pinpointing, but the rest of it, like 70 or 80%, or even if it's 40%, is believable. The rest of the stuff is just a matter of time. And I'm basing that off of watching what the images have done between, 12 months, ago to now. So video will be able to be something that you can prompt in and have a video be created of something that didn't exist. The better that gets, and if it stays on track with how fast the images have advanced, by the, let's say, 6 months, we'll see some people who are a lot more advanced than the average guy be able to start throwing out some videos that look indistinguishable from reality.
Think about the political implications.
And that is what scares me because of political.
Yeah, you mentioned Tim Pool earlier, and him and specifically Ian on his show have, from the beginning of this, they're like the deep fakes are coming. Those are the problem, because in light of, this is what they're talking about. They're like, in light of cancel culture and social credit score and all that stuff that's going to happen, is that anybody or corporation or anybody that doesn't like you is going to be able to destroy you and they'll have video like, no, look, he's on video. He did this.
Well, I think the big argument, too, with them was talking about the DeSantis campaign, putting out fake images that were AI alongside real images, where they showed Trump hugging Anthony Fauci. Are you aware of that?
No.
He got called out for it and never addressed it and never removed it from his campaign videos.
Interesting.
They're on his Twitter. If I'm not mistaken, they're still live today. You can go up and look on DeSantis' Twitter feed, or his X feed, and there are some things he put out. It was probably like 3 or 4 months ago, sometime in the late summer of 2023, where it was like images of Trump, and he was basically, it was an anti-Trump, but not really bashing him, but basically showing Trump at a bad light and saying that he can do better. Anyway,
okay,
it's a campaign video, but a couple of the images were indistinguishable from the other ones, but they weren't real. There was never a moment where they were hugging, or anyway, the images were completely made up, and there was no disclaimer or anything saying, hey, some of these images are fake, because it was mixed in with real. And I was like, that is the most sneaky way to do that. If you just put out an AI video or like a CGI video, we've seen that for years. We've seen cartoons or CGI depict things that, it's just a different art style in my mind. But when you mix something like that in with reality, that's dangerous. And the fact that came from somebody that I had respected at the time really pissed me off. And I was like, that's crazy, because how can we trust anything? Anyway, that's not what I fully want to go on, but that's from...
Well, that is an interesting point, though.
Yeah.
Because, you could flip that around and just be like, well, I believe they were real. How can you convince me that the images that you're showing me aren't the real one?
Right now,
Right?
Right now, there's programs that can tell you if it's AI or not. But that's because it
I
can
heard
look at
that. How does that even work?
it can look at impurities or imperfections in it, and
Okay.
I'm sure there's ways that the image is created. It's like a DNA to every photo.
And how long until something can analyze that and just get rid of that aspect, right?
Exactly. If it just is able to do a test on itself, that it within a split second it passes the test, and then it gives you the photo.
Maybe NFTs aren't pointless. No, I have the token. Look at it. I have the blockchain. This is the real one.
I never understood that. I remember looking at some cool NFTs, and I just screenshotted it, and the value of that screenshot was just as cool as the NFT for me.
Right?
I'm not going to get into this. If you want to watch a really interesting video, the Bored Apes Yacht Club is is racist. Type that into YouTube. There's like a 2-hour video that is one of the most well put together just documentaries on YouTube that I've ever seen.
Okay.
It's a guy just going very deep into the internet culture and like how deep some of the meanings behind some of the stuff they've done is. And at first it's like, oh, come on, you're stretching. He gives evidence that is directly from the horse's mouth, right? That is like indefutable, that this very likely is like a deeply racist organization that was just trolling society. It's just a fun video. So check that out. But anyway, getting back to my point, it's just interesting that all of this is happening, right? We got the country is more divided than ever, and tomorrow it will be more divided than ever, and tomorrow, the day after that, there's nothing that's coming that's changing the tides. We're just becoming further and further divided at different rates, depending what's happening. I talk with Mike, and I'm not going to go into this, is not to defame Mike or not defame, but this is not to talk bad about Mike in any way. But me and Mike talk every day. Like I said, we disagree on so many things.
Sure.
The fundamental morals, like we're close enough that we can remain friends, and this stuff doesn't matter.
Yeah, of course.
But stuff he'll tell me, sometimes I want to look it up, and I can't find the article to talk about what he says, and I have to dig. And some things I'll say to him.
That's why we were talking about that earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
it's like you're looking for a specific thing, left or right. I've run into both, and you can't find the specific thing because it's so far buried.
Yeah. But sometimes he'll tell me something that Trump said or something that somebody said, and I'll laugh about it because it is funny, and I'm not defending these people. They don't pay my bills, kind of thing. So I can have fun with him, and he can have fun with me. But then I'll go, and sometimes sometimes something he says will get under my skin, not from him, but what they're implicating, because I'm like, wait, I know that full video in the context, and maybe I'll send it to him. I don't do it often because I'm not trying to start an argument, but sometimes I'm like, hey, actually, that thing you said is actually, this was the full context. We're getting to the point where when I go to look for the full context, it's possible that the full context and the part that he's talking about will all be generated and created and fake, and there will be no way to find, like, if the whole thing is fake, then what am I researching? I'm researching something that's fake. I'm only going to find that fake thing. And how do I prove it's not real?
Exactly.
It will get to the point where even me, with somebody, like I love Trump, if they put out a video of Trump doing something that, I mean, there's people who he can't do anything wrong. I'm not one of those people. I could change my opinion on wanting to vote for him in a heartbeat if he did something to a certain degree. So what's to say a video is not going to come out that I can't defute of him doing this or that? Yeah. And that goes for anybody.
Dude, so I have another Dostoevsky quote.
Yeah, go for it.
That
dude is so interesting.
He is. And I just finished one of his books, which is why I'm kind of on that right now. But into like what you're saying is like, how do you know about like the reality that's going around you? Okay. Above all, don't lie to yourself. The man who lies to himself and listens to his own lie comes to a point that he cannot distinguish the truth from within or around him, and so loses all respect for himself or for others. And having no respect, he ceases to love. And okay, so that
creepy,
right? So obviously that's talking about, like personal humanity.
This man is coming out of the Cold War era, right? This is a long time ago for this stuff to make so much sense.
Annexed to a labor camp in Siberia with only access to the stuff that they want him to have access to, which the story of how he got there is crazy enough. But, so, and again, I am so green on this type of stuff, only just starting to, read into it and explore it a little bit. But like now, just bring that over from humanity, technology didn't exist, and just apply that to it. But we created the technology, right? So it's still subject to the human condition, right? Another quote, not from him, but what's this guy's first name? His last name's Baldwin. I forget the
Alec Baldwin?
No,
Like the actor?
No, like old school.
Oh, history guy.
Yeah.
Or historical
And he
figure.
said,
I don't know.
someone thinks that they're alone in the suffering and what they're going through, and then you find out that it happened to Fyodor Dostoevsky 100 years ago when you're reading The Idiot. And it's like, these stories are like, the story is old as time because the human condition is old as time.
That's
and
like
the
that cycle
same
we
thing,
talked about.
it's just over manifesting and over manifesting and over manifesting over again. And it's just kind of wild.
I watched a movie. If I was going to give one movie review in the last year of anything I've seen, the best movie I've seen, and by a long shot, was The Holdovers. And it's a movie about an all-boys school. Actually, if you want to check out Simon's rants on YouTube, I did a movie review with him on that. Definitely a good channel and good video to go check out. Please go support him. But me and him have been trying to go for years. He finally got me out to this movie, and it's shot like the 70s. Like the video was like and it was like a piece of time. Like, you know, it was interesting. It was so well done, but it was a lot of good morals. But there was this one scene where basically it's all this small group of kids that get held over at the all boys school during the holiday break of Christmas, and what starts out as like 5 boys turns into one boy. You know, one grieving mother who lost her son in Vietnam War, and this one kid who's just been kicked out of a bunch of schools and just really needs a chance. Mm-hmm. And you watch all of them need each other more than they ever thought. And it winds up being this really good story that wasn't just a feel-good story. I can't say enough good about it. But there's this one scene where they're in a history museum. And this is it's funny. So many of the silly things that I've heard all my life are making so much more sense now. And I don't know if it's my age or the times we're living. I don't know. It's hard to tell. Mm-hmm. But he was talking about, like, you know, he was trying to interest the kid in history, and he starts showing him, you know, he's like, the kid likes, you know, obviously girls, so he starts showing him this pottery that had like all this like what would have been pornography back then, where it's like people, you know, having sex with one another on the pottery, and they make some kind of joke, and he's like, man, if you know, this your class would be a lot more interesting if you had a little porn into it. And it was like a funny joke, but he says something in response to the kid of like. He says it much more elegant than I'm going to say, but basically the idea is, you know, history is just a self-reflection of the present. And he's like, if you want to know more about yourself, just look at the past. And I was like, man, like, again, that's something so simple, and it might sound stupid if you're listening, but for whatever reason, I can't get it off my mind. The history of the world has become so much more interesting to me than it ever has been, because we're hitting a time where I am scared of the future. So I'm looking at the past. Whereas before I was skating on, you know, and we've even actually the episode me and you did with Brandon, where we were talking about like people of the past, they don't know what it's like now and this and that. Now I'm starting to realize that no, the mentality is the same. The vision is different. It's really all the same thing. We're in a big cycle. And I think looking at the past will really help us. And maybe it will help us stop from a possible civil war or whatever's coming.
Yeah. We just talked a lot about how, life looks very different, and rapidly it's becoming more and more different in ways we can't imagine. But
the reaction is the same.
But we are we're still using wisdom from ancient Greek and Rome and Russia, Cold War era, and it all rings true. Even you know, even relatively modern, you know, C.S. Lewis and just other great authors and minds, and it still applies exactly today. I mean, I was having a conversation with Alex after I just finished Screw Tape Letters earlier this year. I had my first time going through it. So good. And even if you're not a Christian, just go, just about life, about good versus evil, about you know, wherever you think morality comes from, just go listen to it or read it, go through it, because it's kind of amazing how it just rings perfectly true to your inclinations, the thoughts in the back of your head, human behavior, all that. And it's like, he didn't have access to anything special. he had access to history.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
It's like, are these people ahead of their time, or
the human
is it
condition
repeating?
repeats itself
Yeah.
because while life has changed, the general incentive structure behind life hasn't changed because it's part of the reality in the universe that we live in.
There was something, I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday. I was asking them, I said, hey, did you ever see this? Because it changed my perspective on World War II. And I think it's on HBO, but it's called History in Color, or World War II in Color. It's
Okay.
one of the, you could find it with just that. Basically, it used CGI, and it took World War II footage, and it ran it through CGI, not AI, CGI, to recreate basically a new image. So you're watching what looks like a real footage, but it went from being that old Holocaust footage that we grew up watching in school, where I never felt like I was looking at a bunch of bodies, and torture. Like I don't think I really understood it.
Yeah.
And it was like I saw these footage, like all the same footage that I watched in school or on the History Channel growing up. It's like I saw it for the first time. And there was something about it being visually similar to what we see today that made it real. And that's something within my mind. I don't really know how that is.
Because you're like, I know this. I'm not watching a movie. I'm not watching like a Hollywood movie. I'm watching just a recreation of what was real.
It wasn't even just that. It was like you've seen footage of bodies piled up, right, from Holocaust. They're very bad footage, and it's black and white. Did you feel the same as if you were to watch a YouTube video of a bunch of bodies piled up in the street now?
Only in one circumstance.
Okay.
So I actually don't even remember how young I was. I was young. We went to D.C., and one of the things we did while we were in D.C. Is we went to the Holocaust Museum. And the way, the immersiveness, if anybody's never been, of that museum, and the way the images and the videos that they have are portrayed, really puts you in that place. And I have like vivid memories of that kind of stuff because, I'm not, you're not just doing this or clicking to a website. You're in an environment that's like lit, and it's like you're standing in like a recreated gas chamber while they show you video and play audio, and it's crazy.
That makes sense. I remember in Germany going to some of the locations.
Yeah,
I remember
exactly that eerie feeling.
I broke into an old tunnel that was used by the military. And I went back every night breaking bricks away from the side of a mountain and found tunnels left from World War II. I have footage of it on my Facebook, but like we found like chains on the walls and tables, like where somebody was obviously being held, and then the secret passage where you could walk behind and look through a hole that probably had a window that people can go in and watch people. And like, I'm adding all this, but it was very unnatural the way this thing was built.
Yeah.
But I remember that was the most real that had ever been for me. But anyway, going back to this, it's something worth checking out. I think it's called History in Color, or World War II in Color. But they basically recreated it to where it looked very realistic and detailed. And for the first time, I didn't just see shadowy images of what I know as a human being. I saw young boys, younger than we are now. We're in our 30s. I saw young boys marching to their death. I saw moms and children. It was so surreal to me. I forget what my point was on that, but it was just interesting to see that and it become more real. And it's hard to grasp a lot of these things, but yeah, I guess going back to like all these men from times before, it's like, are they ahead of their time, or is history repeating itself? And I think history is just repeating itself. I think, like you said, they didn't have some magical thing and some view into the future. They just were talking about that, and human beings are the same, and we're going to keep repeating the same behaviors.
I forget who said it, but it's kind of like a modified version of history repeats itself. But what the quote is that history doesn't repeat itself; it imitates itself.
Interesting. Yeah.
So it's like, because like, people will be like, oh, well, that's not true, and it's like, okay, well, technically that's not true, right? But it's like, no, but it is going to imitate itself, and it's going to imitate itself in this specific way over and over again. Obviously nothing is exactly repeating itself, but it is going to imitate itself, and it imitates itself because humans follow the human condition, because while life has changed drastically, the incentive structure is overall still the same. And that applies to humans in history, that applies to politics, that applies to relationships and marriage and parenting, and it's crazy.
Knowing that mentality, there's also a lot of rhetoric that I'm seeing even on the mainstream media right now where they're calling out people like Donald Trump and Vivek as being Nazi-esque and saying like, hey, this is the Nazis all over again. And I'm seeing like prominent newscasters saying things like this. And it's like, they're placating on the fact that we all know the saying that history repeats itself. And they're saying, hey, we're watching it happen again. And I forget what I'm so stupid, but there's the terminology of like, is something actually happening, or is us talking about it creating it?
Make it happen.
And what's that thing from The Matrix, right? When she says, oh, and don't worry about the vase. He breaks it. And she's like, the crazy thing is, if I didn't tell you about it, would you have still broken it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, a good representation of where we're at in the political sphere right now. I think so many people are now talking about civil war. I forget the poll that they took recently of people thinking, whether it was like asking whether or not they believe a civil war will be in their lifetime. And it was like in the 40 percentile. It was something crazy. And I thought to myself when I heard that, is that confirmation that it's coming? Whether it was coming before that or not. If enough people believe it, will it manifest itself through preparation? Because I heard that my first thought was preparation. Well, now I'm prepping, so now my mind is thinking something's coming because I've already prepared for it. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to accept that they've prepared for something that's not coming. We might say that we don't.
Yeah.
But that's how the mind works, right? Mm-hmm. We're such predictable, weak beings, which is why we need a God. Mm-hmm. But anyway, different subject. But looking at the 2024 election and everything that's coming, the mentality, the separation of human beings in this country, and the capabilities of lies just becoming more powerful than ever. I don't know.
Especially with the deepfake thing,
through AI. Like, I don't see 2024 ending well. I've never been more, I don't want to say scared, because if in the end, it's gotten to the point where it's so big that I have to go back and rely on the fact that Jesus Christ is our Savior and that nothing is bigger than Him. And that I can't fear. I have to. It's like forcing me to look to God way more than ever before. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm not the only one.
Of course not.
Have you noticed a massive uptick of celebrities and YouTube and influencers and just your social media platform turning to Jesus? Have you noticed that over the past 6 months, 8 months?
I have noticed that a little bit. I would honestly say a little bit longer than that.
But it seems to be ramping up.
Honestly, I think that not during COVID, but post-COVID, it kind of left a lot of people.
So you think
with,
that might
with
be
a lot of questions?
That might be a founder or foundation for it. You mean, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I've been wondering what has caused it and if I'm crazy or not, because I'm like sending them to Jenny. I was like, all right, I'm going to start sending you every person that's famous that gets saved and is like openly for Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. So I've sent her like Hulk Hogan, Rob Schneider, and those are the two most recent ones, Kat Von D, and all these people, and they all keep talking about how evil has exposed itself in such a way that they realized that there was a side to be taken. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, what side do I want to be on? And I think that the world is exposing itself, humanity is exposing itself for the evil that is within all of us, including me. And
100%.
It's showing us the idea that there is a side to take. And there's no longer, hey, I'm just going to mosey through life, not thinking about that. It's like in our faces that evil exists.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, the idea that, humans are inherently good, I don't get that. Humans are inherently evil, and the more they're left alone, the more evil and the more wretched they are.
Every argument I've had with somebody about that boils down to one thing I think you need to ask right off the bat is what's the standard of good and what's the standard of evil? Because once you figure that out, you realize that unless you're putting it up against God, you can manipulate it to always look at us as being inherently good. Every time I've had that argument, that's where it ends.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what are you basing this off of?
Yeah, and it's like where does your baseline morality come from? And it's like, okay, well, really, you're just borrowing that from. It's like time period cherry picking. It's like, oh well, like obviously, like you don't murder people, and it's like, okay, well, until when? Because at this point, like you could, and what pivoted to where you can't, and can murder people, and what caused that? Oh, turns out it was influenced by religion. Mm-hmm. And you can, the further you go back, the more that becomes evident. But like you said, people cherry pick that and they, manipulate it to be, well, I think that this is what makes a good person. And then there's like, you mentioned before, but like, just go to absolute nihilism where it's like, okay, well, there's no such thing as morals. Morals are dictated by society and what society deems is acceptable, and what's acceptable and isn't acceptable is really only determined by the group of people as a whole. So, murder and rape and pedophilia are only not okay because society has deemed that it's not okay. And if society decided it was acceptable, then it should be acceptable because nothing matters. We're born and we're dying, and how and where we die doesn't matter because we're all going to die. And I mean, that's nihilism, right? Obviously, some listener that's more into philosophy might know what kind of nihilism that is or whatever, but
that's how I always view it. It's like, what's the point? Is really how I boil it down.
Yeah. To its point, that's what it is.
So 2024 election, who are you thinking right now? Who you banking on?
Who am I banking on?
And give me like a couple reasons why.
Okay, so for the general election or for primary?
Let's both. What's primary? What are you thinking?
Well, I mean, Trump.
What do you want? What do you think is going to happen?
Trump would not be my ideal primary candidate. Only because he isn't necessarily my ideal candidate. I think that he has too much of a poop storm around him, and I think that he keeps throwing more poop into it. I think it's long been said that he's his own worst enemy.
Funny thing you say that. There's a rumor going around that he pooped himself next to Dianne Feinstein yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I actually couldn't find the footage. It was one of the things Mike said, and I was chuckling about it. And because I said something, he said, "Who are you to judge?" Because I have so many stomach issues. Mm-hmm. He goes, "Who are you to throw stones?" Anyway.
Wait, he pooped himself next to...
I think he said Dianne Feinstein.
Didn't she pass?
Maybe I said Dianne Feinstein, and then that put it in his mind, because I was talking about something. I don't know if she passed. I know she was in the hospital for a while, and then for a couple weeks or a couple months, and then she came back, and they asked her how she was doing, and she said she was
from California, right?
Yeah.
She's at least not... I mean, why would he be next to her?
I have no idea.
I think she passed away, dude.
You know what? Maybe all of this needs to just be looked into further. I couldn't find it, but Mike said he saw something. Anyway.
I mean, I had heard rumors of that before.
We were just laughing about it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Who are we to judge?
Yeah. Anyway, you were saying, so Trump's not your ideal candidate. That was a very good point, though, about the crap storm that he has around him. That's probably the thing I'm most worried about, but I still want him.
Even his presidency was his own worst enemy. Mm-hmm. And then even, I think it's total BS. I think it's political. But even the stuff that happened to him at Mar-a-Lago, like the raid, he shot himself in the foot. I mean, he was in office and left office playing the card of they're out to get me. They're going to do everything they can. They're going to throw the book at me. I'm being unfairly watched. And okay, so if you know that, then why do you give them the things to take you down? Like, if you know that, then give them your papers and make them happy so that they can't.
But he did.
No, he didn't.
Remember they knew about it, and they just said that they wanted to come back because there was an issue with the lock being to the high enough security level.
Well, yeah.
Or not.
But he did that, but he still didn't give them all of the stuff, and they were talking to staff members of his that were working for him that were informing him, that were saying like, hey, we did move boxes around and he told us to move them before you came so that you wouldn't see them. So they were like, okay, and we're still missing these records, so we're going to go look for them.
This is not a defense directly to him. Well, no, when I hear stuff like this, I'm like, what is the real story? Because you could take something that Jenny, my wife and I, or your wife and you, have been through, and if it was scrutinized and put into a Netflix documentary, I'm sure they can make, with a couple, sound, music in the background,
100%.
They can make a pretty riveting story. And so I'm like, well, if there's so much effort after this man, like, what's the real story? And that goes again about the truth. But you're right; he has definitely shot himself in the foot a ton.
Well, yeah.
So who are focused on? Are you still into DeSantis, or somebody else shown some light?
For a primary right now? Yeah, I would say DeSantis. I mean, honestly, I have been following it super close because it's so weighted that I don't think it matters. Although, speaking of BS, depending on what happens in the next couple months of states just throwing him off the ballot, might become a more interesting primary race.
As of right now, recording, it's Colorado, and I think last night or the night before,
Maine.
2 nights ago, was Maine.
In Colorado, he's still on it for now until it's January 4th, I think, which is the day before whatever convention happens or something. Basically, they did that in order to be like, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do this, but we're also going to put this stay in place in case, something else comes up, or to give them time to appeal.
It's all very interesting.
Total wrench to it.
It's hard because I almost wish that this had happened previously to somebody like Biden, so that I could truly prove that I am anti this mentality to where I would stand up for Joe Biden, who I think is a corrupt piece of garbage. But I would die on that hill to keep him on a ballot. I would die on that hill.
Absolutely. No, I agree. Listen,
and I hate the man's policies, and there's nothing good. I can't say anything good about him.
Yeah.
I would die on that hill.
Well, okay, so I like Trump less than you do. I would say that's probably true. I liked some policies that he had while he was president. I think that, well, maybe I would say overall that he was a good president. I think maybe he was a necessary evil.
I think a lot of things foreshadowed everything he did.
I don't like him personally. I don't like him morally. I mean, his funny and entertainment value was great. I like that part of him, but that's not what I want in a leader or a president. And I think that he had a lot of policy failures. I think that on tough issues, he's kind of showed that he's weak and just like a people pleaser, which I don't like. I would prefer more of a principled person. And I think that, and it's kind of like the first term president thing, but the amount of stuff that's been thrown at him in order to keep him out because people think he's dangerous is kind of wild.
It's what has driven me to like him more.
I get that.
Like it's like the enemy of my enemy.
Yeah.
Is my friend. And they have made me and Trump best friends.
I get that.
And the more they throw at him, the more I'm like, this man needs to be like, what is happening? Why
the
do
off
these people
the ballot thing is kind of insane because they're saying that participated in incitement of insurrection or whatever. Well, I mean, those terms have legal definitions and have case law, and absolutely nothing directly he said or did can attribute
and
that.
I'm pretty sure that has to be a federal officer and not the president. It was very specifically for a specific group of people. The more people I've had read this out, who are unbiased, just saying, hey, this is what this is actually for, this is where it's been, why it was implemented in history, and it's like, that has nothing to do with this. It goes back to the meaning of words. Words have meanings.
Yeah.
And it's like now we're seeing
words
at the
have meanings at
levels.
the time that they were written.
Yes. And when we've seen the Second Amendment get butchered into Swiss cheese because of the opposite mindset, and now we're seeing just any law that they want can be manipulated if you get a judge who's willing to, make his mark with it.
Yeah.
It's a scary time. And if they're doing this to somebody like him, I know this sounds like a silly trope, but what would they do to us? it makes me question everything I've seen. I mean, even some of the documentaries on YouTube.
Well, yeah,
that
and I
have
mean, Trump has
fought
always
the nation.
famously said they're not doing it to me; they're
Doing it to you.
doing it to you. I'm just in the way,
Yes.
which is a powerful statement
Yes.
and seems to be true.
Because of what we're talking about is why, like, there's almost nobody that I've seen come anywhere near where I would vote for them over him. And it's not, it used to be for his policies because we really didn't have much options. Now there's some good men that have really stood up. DeSantis is one of them. I don't understand why he hasn't fired his entire
His campaign is terrible.
from day one. I mean, I just feel like they've just been kicking him and beating him down. And he is so much better than they are displaying him. So I will say that, but
And even conservative media, all they want to do is talk about his shoes.
like, what is that? It was
like,
funny for
okay,
a day, and then I'm like, why are we still talking about
Let's
this?
say that it's completely true, which it probably is. Who cares? All right, the
But they're
man's
scared of him.
the man's shorter than he thinks he is, and he has a complex about it, and he wears some lifts.
Who cares?
I'm over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally could care less.
I liked the memes for a day.
Yeah.
It was funny, and then I was shocked
But,
that people
like,
actually cared. It was actually, I was like, wait.
There's a couple shows that I'm just like, I don't even listen to the show anymore because like every time DeSantis comes up, they talk about the shoes for 6 minutes. And I'm like, I used to like your show, dude. But I'm like over it right now because it's so annoying.
Yeah. What do you think about Vivek?
I think that I haven't followed him close enough to have an opinion. The same way that originally both Obama, I mean, for more obvious reasons, I mean, I don't agree with him ideologically and anything. Even 2008,
Obama?
even 2008 version of Obama, I didn't agree with a lot. But with Obama and Trump entering the political sphere I'm like very weary because of how new he is and how flip-floppy he has been, and in the short history that we do have of him politically, it's kind of hard to, get a handle on how he is.
He reminds me of a lot of people in the country that have woken up to the BS and have said, you know what? I'm not for any of this anymore. That is the flip-flopping I'm seeing.
So that's what I saw. That's what I would say in general with him. But then, and again, I don't have specifics or anything, but I think it was actually on Tim Pool. He was pointing out, it was on Tim Pool and Ben Shapiro's show, and a little bit of Matt Walsh, I think. But they were pointing out how many positions he has changed through his campaign.
Okay.
That seemed to not be principled positions, but were like polling positions. And they weren't leaning more conservative. They were kind of like, he took like a principled stand on something and then kind of washed it down to the left. I mean, Trump has been doing that through this campaign too. I mean,
Trump has been pretty bad with that. That's probably my biggest complaint. Is that he keeps sliding to the left instead
on a lot of things,
holding firm.
Mm-hmm. He's most of his attacks to DeSantis on this campaign, unless they're like, like comical character attacks, like the shoes or, speech flubs that he's made or whatever. He's been attacking DeSantis from his left, being like, "Oh, look how right wing he is," and I'm like, "How is this going to win anything?"
Here's where I will expose my mentality through this a little bit, and to where I'm still kind of on the fence for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Is what do I care about more? Do I care about principles that I'm being told somebody has, even if they've stayed true? Because at the end of the day, I think all politicians are liars.
Yeah.
They're all out for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Do I care more about the guy who...
Because the incentive structure is there.
Yeah. Do I care more about the guy who has changed his opinions to placate me more? Because I think he's more aligned with my values? Or do I want the guy like Trump, who I think is the same man on camera as he is in closed doors talking to a foreign leader? And I'm starting to find, and I don't know if this is good or not, but I'm starting to...
like that a little bit more.
Attracted to somebody that I know. I don't agree with a lot of things he says, but I think that's okay. I just want to know that the things I agree with him on, I know that we actually agree and that he's not just saying that for my vote. And I can say at least that much. Can't say I know. I feel pretty confident with Trump that when he says something, or has an idea about, and not the flip flop stuff. This is so hard to say because so many of these guys are scrutinized and you can pick things apart. And like we just talked about flip flopping. I just think the guy I'm voting for is the guy I'm watching.
Yeah.
With Vivek, maybe changing his mind, things like that. But I'm watching a man stand up and risk everything. And he's also a man that is coming from a very wealthy background, or not background, but like as far as being an adult, he's walking away from money and power into this place where he's just going to be ridiculed. And it's like, those are two differences I see with Trump and Vivek that I don't see anywhere else. And it draws me to them like a moth to a flame. And I don't know if that's good or not. And I'm saying that as more of like it's just an open-ended, I don't have a point to that. It just seems to intrigue me more. I want that Elon Musk moment where he looks out to, what was it, the Bob Iger?
Mm-hmm. That was amazing.
And says, F you.
Yeah.
He risked his whole company.
You want to blackmail me with money? Go F yourself.
And he said that to anybody.
Yeah, and then he was like, is Bob in
doubled
here?
And tripled down.
Bob Iger is the CEO of Disney. And he was like, yeah, go F yourself. Like, and the person interviewing was like, wait, what? And he was like, go yourself.
That is an iconic clip.
Don't care.
And that to me is worth more than some guy that goes up there and says all the things I like to hear as far as my morals and my stances and policies.
100%. And it's the only reason that
it's risk. They're taking risks.
It's the only reason that I even like Elon Musk a little bit, because quite frankly, I don't like Elon Musk. I like that part of him. I like that he is just standing up to the nonsense. He's not, conforming to just absolute BS. But you know what? He ideologically, the way that he lives his life, the way that almost all of his political beliefs, except for like maybe a couple, we disagree on like wholeheartedly. He is very much liberal. Yeah. And
he reminds me of what people used to talk about, where they were like, hey, Americans used to just be Americans first of all, and then we'd have our disagreements. Yeah. He's like a good example of that for me. Where I'm like, oh yeah, we disagree on a ton of stuff, but we could joke around and have a blast and then go vote separately.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that, I'm like, I want more of that. Mm-hmm. I'd vote for a Democrat who was like that more than a Republican who I didn't trust. And that's
sure.
So it really shows me that it's really not about the party anymore. It's starting to shift. Like, I want to get away from that tribalism, and it's more about the type of man that you are. Are you willing to risk everything to go tell Bob Iger to go F himself? Are you willing to risk this company that you fought so hard to obtain X, just to say that on an interview and just to hold to your principles and not let somebody control your company like it's been done for so many years? These are things that I think are lacking so hard that they're just basic things. Like me and you probably have a lot of that in ourselves that we deal with every day and that we show. But watching somebody who has so much to lose do that, it's sad that that's such an oddity. Mm-hmm. But it's more intriguing to me than a guy that was just to be formed like weird science as the perfect politician that meets all my needs.
I agree with that. Yeah, and it's and I feel like we've been seeing more and more people from the left take stands like that. I mean, Joe Rogan took a stand like that during COVID about some stuff. We just talked about Elon Musk, and it's just, you are seeing that more and more. And it's a good thing. I hope that we see even more of it. And saying it from people like Vivek who were, in the Democrat Party and involved in it and, have kind of come full circle and stopped and just, woken up. But yeah, I mean, the Overton window has shifted for sure. Look at what Obama ran on versus what he's saying now and where the Democrat Party is, 2008 versus now, a wild difference. Trump is probably somewhere to the left of Bill Clinton as far as a president was, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. The world is a-changing.
It's going to be an interesting year. Let's close on this. What's your fantasy team? 2024 or yeah. What's your fantasy team?
Fantasy team 2024.
Give me president, give me vice president, and 2 to 3 cabinet members.
Oof. That'd be a tough one.
Just quick fire.
So quick fire. Once upon a time, I would have said Trump DeSantis would have been a great ticket. Now I'm not so sure. I would say DeSantis and probably question mark. Just because honestly, I'm not following a lot of like second and third tier political candidates right now. Kind of catching me on like a downslope of my politics following.
It's just for fun.
But yeah, so anyway, I'm just gonna stick with the presidential. I would pick DeSantis right now. Like if it came down to if we were voting tomorrow, that's where I would go because I think that he has said what he's gonna do and then done it. And he has a track record of doing that recently. I don't like some of his like geopolitical policies, like international politics, but that's fine.
Nice. I would do Trump president.
Mm-hmm.
I would do Tucker Carlson vice president, even though I disagree with him on so much. I would
much.
I would literally just love to see it. I'd like to see Vivek as any cabinet member. I don't care. I just want him in politics. And I'd like to see Candace Owens as who's the press secretary. I'd like to see that.
Okay, that would be fun. I mean, I'm not a huge Candace Owens fan, but that would be.
But that's why I want her there because
yeah.
I like her as a person more than I like her politics.
Sure,
to a degree, I like a lot of her, but I'd rather her be there. And then what's his name? Kennedy, head of the EPA.
Ooh, EPA?
Or not EPA. Wait, what's the like natural? Like what's it called? I think it is EPA.
Environmental Protection Agency.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to see him head of EPA or something with.
But not like CDC or anything like that. Like not like a health oriented thing.
CDC is that us or is that? Oh, the WHO is what I was thinking of. The World Health Organization. CDC is
Center for Disease
Is that
Control.
just US though?
Yeah.
Ooh, that'd be tricky. I'd like an AI version of him to run the CDC. I'd like him to actually run the.
I mean, could I one up you on that one?
Yeah, go for it.
Let's put him on the CDC and let's just eliminate the EPA.
Oh, wait a minute. I got one more. Oh yeah, I love that. And the head of the FBI, Alex Jones. That's my fantasy team, right there. I'd vote for that ticket with the biggest smile on my face. I'd start a second YouTube channel just to talk about them every day.
Alex Jones, head of the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if we were gonna not end here and get on to government agencies and what we should do to change the government that runs, we could just go for another. I don't know how long we've been here.
we could do another episode of that. Hey, last question for you: did you play the New World Order video game?
I didn't play it yet. Dude,
go play Alex Jones. Alex Jones has a video game out. If you like old pixel style, like Metal Slug and things like that.
Doom.
Just Doom, yeah. It's what's like a side scrolling, just like WASD or like arrow keys and firing with the space bar. If you were in any kind of conspiracies, or just even if you've heard of them, you are gonna die laughing. You literally go to the pedophile island and you have to the end,
which is real
boss. Yeah, the end boss is Bill Clinton. Playing the saxophone on top of the temple, which is also real, and not him playing, but he's playing on top of the temple, a saxophone, and enemies are coming at you. Anthony Fauci's a boss. It's like, it's the funniest game, and it's voiced by Alex Jones. You play Alex Jones without a shirt on.
I'm like imagining this in my brain right now, and it feels like Alex Jones themed video game merged with Super Mario Brothers South Park
with a gun. Oh yeah, it's like
South Park, like the ridiculousness of a South Park video game, Super Mario Brothers play style and mapping, all Alex Jones conspiracy themed.
It's $20.
Sounds pretty funny.
It's worth 5 coffees. Give up a coffee a week for a month and a week, and you could play that, or just go spend it. Anyway. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm so happy to be back.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you guys for sticking with us. Please share this with anybody you can. I can't confirm it yet because it's not set 100% in stone, but I am really excited. The next guest, if everything works out, will be the first guest, is somebody that I don't know, and I'm having somebody come in from an organization that I'm really excited to talk to. So maybe I shouldn't have even said all that. I really hope it works out, but if not, we'll find an interesting guest for you either way. So yeah, thank you and be well.
See you. And don't worry, the casting couch part isn't that bad.